I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bailey. Roll call, please, Mrs. Meltzer.
Thank you. Mrs. West?
Here.
Mr. Keys?
Here.
Mr. Pearl?
Here.
Mr. Cannon?
Here.
Mr. Aragona?
Here.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yeah, here.
Mrs. Meltzer here.
Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
There is one addition. Item number 16 is an add-on, the introduction of Township Ordinance 455, prohibition of recreational marijuana establishments.
So moved.
Is there a second? Support. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Welcome to your Township Board meeting this evening. This is a special meeting for us because we are honoring all of the volunteers in Clinton Township who volunteer for the township in one way or another. I also see in attendance tonight some church volunteers. Plenty of ways to volunteer in Clinton Township. If you have anything you'd like to say as an item comes before the board, wait till the board is completed and come to the podium, give us your name and address for the record, and we'll hear what you have to say. If you have a comment that is not included in tonight's agenda, we have public comment cards to your left in the front of the room. Please fill one out, and we'll hear what you have to say at the end of the meeting. And I do have one public service announcement this evening. We will have our first road project begin next Monday, and that will be Garfield Road between 16 Mile and Millar. Several years ago, you may remember they did from Millar to 17 Mile. Later this summer, they will be doing from 19 Mile to Hall Road. So those are real good projects for the community. And there's a number of other projects, but those are right on the books. Little Macs, both Little Macs are going to be done this summer. Kelly Road, hopefully, Fraser kicks in their money and we'll do Kelly Road from 15 Mile to Groesbeck. So that's all good news for our community. And with that, we'll take item number one.
Mr. Cannon,
Yes.
if I may, I apologize for not mentioning it to you earlier, but I wanted to let the public know there are elections coming up. May 7th is an election, but it's not for Clinton Township. So that's what I wanted to make sure that you all understand. Clinton Township does not have an election this coming May, and you'll hear a lot of that maybe in other communities, even family members that have an election. Don't be alarmed. You're not missing the election. We don't have one this May. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number one, resolution recognizing April 7th through 13th as 2019 National Volunteer Week.
At the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Charter Township of Clinton held in the board chambers at 40700 Romeo Plank Road, Clinton Township, Michigan, on the 8th day of April 2019, commencing at 6:30 p.m. Whereas National Volunteer Week is an opportunity to recognize and thank volunteers who lend their time, talent, voice, and support to causes they care about in their community. Whereas volunteers can serve to inspire others to find ways to take action that creates change. During National Volunteer Week, we celebrate the impact of volunteer service and the power of change makers to come together to tackle tough challenges and build stronger, more vibrant communities. And whereas National Volunteer Week was established in 1974 and has grown exponentially each year with thousands of volunteer projects and special events scheduled throughout the week. Whereas the Charter Township of Clinton is proud to honor hundreds of volunteers who give thousands of hours annually for the township. Now, therefore, upon motion by this board, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Charter Township of Clinton hereby recognizes the week of April 7th to the 13th, 2019 as National Volunteer Week, which coincides with National Volunteer Week celebrations and events that are acknowledged throughout the state of Michigan and the United States. Be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees gives thanks and gratitude to all of the many volunteers in Clinton Township who make our community the best place to call home.
Thank you, Mrs. Meltzer. Clinton Township receives many benefits from the 327 volunteers that we're honoring this evening. All but 8 had their certificates mailed to their home because it would have taken a long time to go through them. The 8 that are being recognized this evening, and I hope some of them are here, I know for sure, are those that are no longer going to be a volunteer in the community for one reason or another. Our volunteers provide much needed assistance and support, but even that, more so, they bring a passion and an expertise to their endeavors. People who volunteer in a community are much more than just residents. They become stakeholders. By the very act of volunteering, they stake a claim on Clinton Township, which expresses to the world that this place is important to them. They have an interest in it, and they are concerned for its welfare. and they are going to do what they can to keep it flourishing. It is just plain fun for both our volunteers and employees to work together, to get to know each other, to serve a common cause, and share an experience together. Volunteers bring a fresh outlook, a new work ethic, a different insight, and renewed vigor to the project at hand. There is value in being part of a team, knowing that the others are relying on you and that you can rely on them to achieve an intended purpose. Clinton Township is above all else a community. Some synonyms for the word community are collective, cooperative, and fellowship. All these words mean the same thing, not just people living together, but people living, sharing, and thriving together. This is what volunteers bring to Clinton Township. And in receiving this gift, we get to pass it on to our residents, business owners, and visitors. It is for this that I offer my gratitude today. So on behalf of the Township Board and the 100,000-plus residents who live in Clinton Township, thank you to the volunteers here this evening, as well as those who aren't with us.
Move to adopt the resolution.
Support.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Burrow.
Yes.
Mrs. West.
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes,
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melzo? Yes. Motion passes.
and thank you once again to all the volunteers. Item 2 on the agenda.
Dear members of the board, in honor of National Volunteer Week, April 7th to the 13th, the Clinton Township Board of Trustees recognizes former committee members whose appointments expired or those who resigned in 2018. Each person will be presented with a certificate of appreciation at the board meeting on Monday, April 8th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. We are pleased to honor the following former committee members. First name committee is for the Cultural Diversity Committee, Kate Brown. Is she here? All right. Conservation Committee, Roger Cardamone. Is he here? Okay. Arboretum Committee, Joseph Peruzzi.
Joe's a longtime employee who's now retired and comes back and volunteers in the community. We appreciate everything you've done, from the Arboretum to South Gratiot. Is this Joe's?
Yeah.
Cruise. Thanks for Joe.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Also from the Cultural Diversity Committee, Elaine McGeiger. Is she here? From the Board of Review, Linda Pegg. And Zoning Board of Appeals, Denise Trombley. The Gratiot Cruise Committee, Andrea Irons. I believe she's here.
Andrea is now a prosecutor, works in the prosecutor's office, but started as a young lady in Clinton Township volunteering. Well, she and her family has been doing it for years and years. Continues on.
And finally, the Gratiot Cruise, Mike Oginski. Is he here? Okay. Furthermore, certificates of appreciation have been mailed to volunteers and appointed members who have so generously volunteered their time in the service to the following events and committees: the Arboretum Committee, Friends of the Arboretum, Community Blood Drive, Compensation Committee, Conservation Committee, Gratiot Cruise Committee, Historical Commission, Housing Commission, Recreation Department events, Citizens Advisory Road Committee, and Senior Adult Life Center events. Sincerely, Robert Cannon, Supervisor for the Clinton Township.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved to approve. May I say something?
You certainly may. Is there a second?
Support.
Thank you, Mrs. West.
Thank you. I know that there are two people here from the Housing Commission, and we wouldn't be able to do it without
Oh, you're right.
Tom Tignanelli and Bruno.
And they've done a fantastic job for many years. And Tom dresses up as Santa Claus for the Goodfellows and other groups, and works on the Gratiot Cruise. Volunteers seem to keep volunteering over and over again. It's
Mr.
good for them. It's good for the community.
Can I also say Henry Summerstorfer, who's dedicated many, many hours and years and days to the Cultural Diversity Committee, and I think the Historical Committee, or the Arboretum. I apologize, yes. So, thank you.
Very good.
Ray Gleim is here. Is Ray Gleim in the house? There he is.
There you go.
There's Ray. Oh, my goodness, there's so many people here.
Sherman Cunningham, Frank Morella,
Can you all stand? Mr. Cannon, could they all stand so
Bob
we can
Campbell.
recognize everybody that's volunteered?
Very good. All the volunteers, please stand. So we can acknowledge you all at once. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. And item 3 is request to host St. Thecla Fall Festival.
Ms. Meltzer, we are requesting to be included on the agenda at the next Clinton Township Board meeting. St. Thecla is seeking permission from the Clinton Township Board to host a fall festival on our parish grounds Saturday, September 21st, and Sunday, September 22nd of 2019, to include erecting and using temporary structures. Temporary structures will be erected on Tuesday, September 17th, and will be removed on Tuesday, September 24th of 2019. All permits and associated fees related to the setup of tents and electrical wiring will be applied for prior to the festival. All state and county permits required will also be applied for prior to the festival. All required inspections will be arranged prior to the festival. The main tent will be set up in the school parking lot, which runs parallel to South Nunley. The children's game tent will be adjacent to the main tent. Children's rides will be located in the same parking lot on the north side of the main tent. The main tent size is 60 feet by 180 feet, and the children's game tent will be 30 feet by 80 feet. Children's rides will be contracted, and the required insurance certificates will be provided. A site plan is attached. We are requesting permission to collect money in the main tent area for raffle tickets, 50/50 raffles, fast food, pop, water, beer, and wine. Basket raffle ticket sales will be in the gathering space, which is the indoor area connecting the church and the activity center. The festival hours on Saturday, September 21st will start from 12 p.m. to 11 p.m. with music ending at 10 p.m. On Sunday, September 22nd, Mass will be celebrated at 11 a.m. in the tent. The festival will open at 1 p.m. and end at 8 p.m. Additional parking will be available at St. Luke Lutheran Church and School located on South Nunley, just east of St. Thecla, with shuttle service available. Any questions may be directed toward Festival Co-Chair Timothy Barr. Sincerely, Father Brian Kokenauger, Honorary Chair, and Timothy and Karen Barr, Co-Chairs.
And all 3 are in the audience tonight. If you have any questions or comments. Is there anything you'd like to say, Tim?
Tim Barr, 38339 Delta. Yeah, we're excited. I mean, we're really looking forward to this. I mean, this is quite an expansion for us, and we're looking to have a safe and fun community event for everybody.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions of board members? Mr. Pearl?
Yeah, I just want to say it's great to have you do this, and I hope it works out real well for you. Have a great weekend. We'll pray for a sunny
Thank you very much.
weekend. I'll move that we approve the request and that they allow them to collect money on the tent.
Support.
Non-beer related items.
Thank you.
Second.
Mrs. Meltzer?
And just one really quick, you may already know this, but you're going to need a special license from the Liquor Commission.
Correct.
And they want you to make that request a minimum of 10 days prior to the need for it, so the sooner you get in, the better.
Correct, thank you.
Okay.
Very good. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, request approval for temporary structure at the Kroger on Garfield and Canal.
My name is Tim Kopietz, and I am the store manager of your Clinton Township Kroger, Canal, and Garfield. We are looking to construct a shade structure for floral selling this spring. This has been done in years past as long as the proper permits were obtained. After speaking with one of your clerks this afternoon, it looks like I need board approval before I can request the temporary structure permit. The gentleman mentioned that there was a meeting scheduled on 4/8, and there was a possibility of getting our shade structure moved onto that meeting's agenda. The structure itself is slated to be 10 feet by 60 feet and sit on the sidewalk in front of the store. It used wooden pallets to showcase various floral product and gardening supplies. It is constructed by Michigan's own Andy Mass Greenhouses. Right now, we are hoping to have the structure built on the last week of April. Any help you could provide would be greatly appreciated. Please feel free to contact me or any of the numbers below with any questions or concerns, and thanks again. He's this, that's District G, store number 528.
Mr. Miller, our building department head, has been in contact with the store manager and feels everything is in order. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Pearl, supported by Mrs. Meltzer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And item 5 is a fence variance on Webster Street.
I am requesting the Clinton Township Board approve a variance to allow a fence in front of my house located at 20685 Webster Street. The house is located at the back of the property, and I would like the fence to be 24 feet from the sidewalk. Thank you, Gabriel Tononi.
Mr. Miller, you are in favor of this request?
Yes, Mr. Cannon, I reviewed it. This gentleman's backyard consists of about 5 feet to the rear property line from the back of his house, so he really has literally no backyard. He wants the fence to be able to, he wanted to go out closer to the road, but our ordinance only allows you to go to the front edge of the home. The neighboring houses are approximately 24 or 25 feet from that sidewalk, so I have no objection to him going 24 feet from the sidewalk. That would be fine.
Thank you. Mr. Aragona?
Yeah, Barry, if we allow this and the gentleman decides to take that fence out, will the variance still apply if he decides to put a different fence in?
It's a variance for what he's doing right now. I mean, if he were to go with a 6-foot privacy fence, I probably would not be.
Or a chain link?
Allowing that. We have to be able to see the front yard of a home for any kind of ordinance enforcement. 6-foot privacy fence would not allow us to do that.
Right.
I think being that it's a 4-foot picket fence, I have no objection at this time. I would probably advise against a privacy style fence, but
What if
at
he
that
won't-
time, he would have to obtain a separate permit, and it would go through this process again.
What if he wanted to put in a chain link?
I would have no objection to that. It could carry through as long as the fence, he would still have to obtain another permit. I probably would not waste this board's time with that type of request.
Jack, you look like you're moving forward there.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Dolan?
Yes, if you wanted to, you could include as a condition, if this is something you want to consider, linking the grant of the request to this specific fence, or you could link it to any replacement fence that's of a particular style. So you have that option if you want to, in whatever motion you
Right.
make, if you want to approve the fence.
So I discussed this with Barry before. Obviously, this is kind of a hard lot. This is an older lot. Like Barry said, the house is very close to the back edge. I'd personally be in support. I noticed that the gentleman has a picket fence up. It looks like a white picket fence. It looks like a very nice one, but if he wants to keep, whether it's kids or dogs or whatever, from going out into the street, I support it. I think it should only apply to this fence, which does look good. I don't want to see like a chain link out in front of somebody's yard. That's my
You have the floor to make a motion.
I'll make that motion. As Jack, help me out with the wording on.
You're doing pretty good so far.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Approve as presented, subject to the style of fence being as shown, a picket fence only.
You get that, Carol? Yes, I do. All right, that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Support.
Supported by Mr. Keys. Roll call, please.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. And item 6 is a distribution of the draft 2019 Clinton Township Master Plan, and this basically starts the process. It's the first step. It is now going to be, if the board approves the distribution tonight, on the website, so you could look it up. Next will be a 63-day period that we have to wait and give all the taxing agencies a chance to review it. Mr. Bruce Thompson, our planning director, is here to add some comments to what's this evening.
Thanks. I did want to make one additional comment. Thank you, Mr. Cannon, and that is, as part of the process, today is the first step of the formal process, but it's been a while since the master plan, really, this project started, and Mr. Cannon and I and some of the folks that we've been working with felt that it was important to get some additional public input prior to this going to the formal public hearing process. So what we've done is we've set a meeting, a public forum, that is going to be April 23rd, which is a Tuesday this month, at 6:30 PM at the South Branch of the library on Gratiot. This will just be an opportunity where the planning department will kind of give folks a summary of the characteristics of this community. That's part of the overall master plan. And then just to take some public comment on how the citizens of this community feel that this township should move forward in the next 5 years. So if anybody has any questions, they're certainly welcome to contact the planning department. But again, that'll be Tuesday night, April 23rd, 6:30 PM at the South Branch of the library on Gratiot. And we look forward to all the comment we can get at that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All are welcome. Tonight's motion should simply be to approve the distribution of the draft 2019 Clinton Township Master Plan.
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. Mr. Gilliam?
Yep. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is that the master plan is a provision that's put forward in state law. It basically says, as a community, as a self-governed community, a charter township, this is your, in a sense, guiding document. It's the document that says, this is where we are now. This is where we think we need to be 5 years down the road. Here are some of the steps that are going to take place to get us there. And so it's a very important and integral document to the future of the community. If you look at part of it where it says community description, it basically goes through the population changes. In 1980, we were 72,400 residents. In 1990, 85,000, 2000, 95,000, 2010, 96, 796, 2018, 102, and then by 2045, only 114,000 residents. So we've gone through this period of like tremendous growth each decade, 10,000 new residents pretty much. And now we're pretty much 95% developed. And so we're no longer a growth community. We're in some respects an aging community. We have infrastructure needs that we're going to have to address. So having a document like this is that much even more important to say, what do we have? Where do we need to be? What are the steps to get there? And what we found when our new planning director came on board is that even though it's a requirement in state law, we didn't have one of these documents that was current, that was in place. And so the goal here was to create a real important structure that is required by state law. But I think a lot more work needs to go into a document like this, a lot more outreach, not just the planning and not just some of the board members, but I think all of the board members agree that it's important to get public feedback from residents. It's important to take this out on the road and say, tell us what you think we need to be. How do we take, for instance, our strengths? What are we good at? What makes us a valuable community and an enticing place to want to be? And then how do we build on those strengths? How do we correct some of the things that we need to correct? So it's incredibly important for the public, I think, to go online, take a look at this document, come to the public forums. If you're unable to come to the public forums, send an email. All of our email addresses are right there, and say, I think you guys need to be looking at this. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make its way into the document, but it can help sort of the guiding principles of this. And it's also important to, I think, acknowledge that this is somewhat fluid. This is a document that can be changed. It's a document that can evolve into something even stronger than what it currently is. So I just want to add that part of it because I think it's crucial to the future of the community.
I agree, and in 2 weeks, you'll have another request from me. I had it on the agenda once, but I wanted this to be distributed first and available first. But I will be talking about visioning and what I hope to accomplish with the board and the public over the next several months. Very good.
Oh, if I could.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Planning Department. And I believe you had to work with a contractor at one point, too, to help get this together, correct?
That is correct.
What was the name of the contractor? I'm sorry.
Can't remember right off the top of my
I
head.
can get
I'm
with you
sorry.
after the meeting, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And so in looking at this, going through it, some things stick out to me that I'm excited about, I'm worried about, and I think that this is a great opportunity to engage with the public. Mr. Argona and myself went through an MSU extension program where they talked about this process and talked about the different ways you can engage with the community. I understand that we put this plan together to meet state requirements and we want to move forward, and that's exactly what we want to do. I hope that in the future, and I believe our planning director is moving in that direction from our conversations to really have more of a public engagement and more of an engagement with this board. A conversation we had last week was I found out about the release of the plan via Facebook and a post. And so I'd like to see a little bit more coordination between board members, the public, and a way to make sure that we're hosting an opportunity that's beneficial to all. And in looking at the actual plan, one thing that we've seen in the newspaper throughout the last couple of months is this increase in senior population. That's something that is evident in this document and that we're going to see going forward. Two other things that surprise me is one, even the race component of our township. We're seeing a huge increase of Black and Asian residents. And I think that's something that we can reflect back on and say, what can we as a township board or the township government do to make sure that we're servicing those individuals to the best of our ability? The other thing that concerned me was the income. We saw a drop in median income, and compared to the county, the average income of the township is not meeting that same standard. And that's something that I think we want to keep an eye on as township board members and in the direction and the way of our economy. The last thing was the home ownership. I saw that dipped as well, slightly, so I was happy to see the word slightly in there. That's something that I want to hopefully work with our planning director, use county programs, state programs, to try to convince the residents that may be renting in Clinton Township to eventually choose Clinton Township as their home and get those numbers to increase. And the last point I want to make to residents is make sure you look at our land use maps. I think that was one thing to me that changed the most. And I was wondering if the planning director maybe could elaborate a little bit on the idea of this redevelopment corridor. We're seeing in Groesbeck, it used to be industrial and commercial, and the new future land use map is going to create a redevelopment district. And I think that's worth talking about at the board meeting. So I was wondering if you could elaborate
Well,
on that.
I don't know, are you prepared for that?
Well, I
Mr.
can just
Thompson?
briefly, I mean, I don't want to take too much time on it because really that's the kind of the point of the whole public forum, and certainly the township board members and the planning commissioners and any board member can be there. But first of all, to answer your earlier question, it's Carlisle Wortman. Sorry, you just caught
Okay,
me off
thank you.
guard.
Yeah, thank you.
Second, I think Mr. Gillingham really kind of stated it very clearly, is that the community has changed. So when you look at the existing land use map, say, compared to the existing land use map 10 years ago or 20 years ago, obviously, we're really more of a redevelopment community than we are a developing community. And one of the tasks that was really given to me when I brought on, or the main task, if you will, at least from an economic development standpoint, was to focus on redevelopment of the Groesbeck corridor. And, the DDA has done a great job with Gratiot. There's a board, a body whose task is that same thing, right? They're solely focused on helping redevelop that corridor. And I just felt that having the master plan future land use map, which is a fluid document, but it is there to help the planning commission and the township board guide their decision-making processes on what uses go where, that if I'm being asked, and my department is being asked to focus on Groesbeck, let's create a master plan designation that allows flexibility, right? And you'll be seeing ordinances when you look at a master plan. A master plan isn't just a master plan for the sake of having one. Under Act 33, the Planning Enabling Act, which says you must have a master plan, that master plan is there to be in tune with having a zoning ordinance. So you have a master plan, it drives the zoning ordinance, your zoning ordinance backs up the master plan, they work in tandem. And so you'll be seeing some zoning ordinance changes in the near future that will help us as a community, focus on redeveloping that Groesbeck corridor. So I think, in working with consultants and working with Mr. Cannon's office and the discussions I've had with the Township Board, I felt creating a specific designation for that corridor was important. It could potentially help us focus. It could potentially help us get funding for redevelopment purposes and economic development purposes. So that'll be part of my discussion at the public forum. Certainly, that's a very important part, is we will have a large version of that future land use map, and we do want to hear what everybody says, what should be going here in the future, what should be here in the future. It's a very important component of that master plan. So thank you for allowing me to explain that.
No, that's great, and thank you very much for being available to answer those. And I just encourage the public to come on out and participate in this event. I know I had a coffee hour scheduled, and I'll be rescheduling that so people can really come in and interact with it. The one question I do have for Mr. Dolan, as a board member, we're going as guests, and there won't be a role for us to speak at this meeting, I don't think. Am I correct in that?
Well, there will be no role to speak, and we're not going to make any decisions. So it will be a chance. I mean, we think that more than 4 will be there.
Right, that was my only concern.
Yeah. But no, there will be no, Mr. Thompson will be in charge of that meeting.
Yeah,
Great.
the planning department will be facilitating, and we are just looking at kind of an open conversation back and forth, getting ideas, writing them down. We'll really be focusing on a couple things. One is SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and then, of course, the future land use plan. And I think the statistics, making everybody aware of how this community has grown and changed in the last decade. Those are really the kind of the 3 components. So it'll be really open and flowing, and we're just throwing out ideas so we can write them down and we can get that information back to the consultants, and we can incorporate what everybody feels is important parts that are missing in that master plan right now.
I think that's a good opportunity. And then do you take any of that data and then incorporate it in the master plan, or is it more just for your office to use and for us to hear? I mean, does that analysis go into the master plan?
Absolutely. All the information that's compiled will be given to the consultant, and anything that isn't already part of that plan can be incorporated into that plan. So absolutely, now's the time.
Perfect.
And of course, just, it's on the website. I did email copies to the Township Board. The Planning Commission has it as well. You have paper copies that I distributed to you today. So if you have any ideas now or tomorrow or next week, feel free to contact me and give me that information. We don't have to wait until the public forum. We don't have to wait 63 days to hear that information. I want information now, as much information as we can get throughout that entire 63-day period.
And so the consultant will be available, obviously, at the meeting, but it's my understanding that you'll be running the meeting, the consultant's just there to take in the information. I've seen a couple of these happen where the consultants are in charge, and it's not as pretty.
It'll be myself, and it'll be my new Assistant Planning Director, Matt Wallace. The 2 of us will be facilitating this.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Roll call?
Mr. Pearl.
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam.
Yes.
Mrs. West.
Yes.
Mr. Keys.
Yes.
Mr. Cannon.
Yes.
Mr. Argona.
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 7 is a property distribution committee recommendations.
On March 26, 2019, the Clinton Township Property Disposition Committee reviewed multiple offers to purchase the Clinton Township-owned properties as follows. 24830 Dave Street, recommendation to accept the bid of $11,600 was submitted by Circle Solutions of Harrison Township, contingent upon the petitioner obtaining any necessary permits and a certificate of occupancy for the home. At 23726 Carlington, recommendation to accept the bid from Circle Solutions in the amount of $14,700, contingent upon the petitioner obtaining any necessary permits and a certificate of occupancy for the home. At 23333 Harvard Shore, recommendation to accept the bid from Michael Yono in the amount of $15,000, contingent upon the petitioner obtaining any necessary permits and a certificate of occupancy for the home. On Manila Street, lot number 24 and lot 25, recommendation to accept the bids from Joseph DiMaria in the amount of $350 each for each lot, and include the adjacent lot number 26 for an additional $350. Vacant lot Nikki, a recommendation to accept the bid from Ed Dunsing in the amount of $2,500. The lot will be split by the township prior to sale. On 19758 Broad Acres, a recommendation to accept the bid from Ed Dunsing in the amount of $2,500. The lot will be split by the township prior to sale. vacant Hardy Street. Recommendation to accept the bid from Tiffany Jones Rogers in the amount of $99. On Fort Street, vacant lot, recommendation to accept the bid from Keith Atwell in the amount of $500. McCoy Street, recommendation to accept bid from Baron E. O'Neill in the amount of $650.50. Habitat for Humanity request, recommendation to accept the bid from Habitat has submitted a formal written request for 8 separate lots on Walnut, LaCroix, and Fort for long-term planning purposes. The Planning and Community Development Department is recommending that 4 additional township lots be combined with the ones Habitat is requesting to dispose of them and allow them larger lots to build upon in the future. We submit this recommendation for your consideration. Sincerely, Bruce Thompson, Department of Planning and Community Development Director.
Okay, this is a very good job. I'm very pleased with everything. I just have a question on the first 3 homes. Are there any purchasers who are going to live in the homes, or are these all going to be for speculation?
Mr. Cannon, I actually don't know the answer to that question. They haven't indicated to me whether they're purchasing it to rent or purchasing it to live. I do not have that information.
Okay.
Sorry.
I would say most likely these are investors
Yeah.
that want to fix up the property. And then, for them, it's an economic decision whether they want to flip the property and sell it to recoup their investment and then, buy something else, or they want to use it as perpetual income and through a rental operation. But either way, this was the process of the Property Disposition Committee even prior to.
Oh, no, I'm
because
fine with it.
Clinton Township has always bought their properties. We want to be self-directed in what happens. But what it means is our first thing we do, take them out to bid. If no one bids on them, then we will entertain offers from people. And the problem is, we've got well over 200 properties that we're holding on to. And a lot of these properties, it does not make sense for us to hold on to. So 1, get them out to bid. 2, begin to entertain offers. Some of them are sort of unbuildable lots in neighborhoods that could easily be attached to somebody's property. So, one of the future things that we have to do is reach out to the adjacent property owners to say, hey, do you want half? Do you want the other half? You add it to your property, we then get it back on the tax
Yeah,
rolls.
we've been doing that.
Yep,
That's good.
which is advantageous for all of us. And so I just have to commend Bruce and Mary and Barry and also the assessing office, because when we sit down and go through this, it's an amalgamation. We're pulling up maps and there's sewer lines, there's a debt service line, so it makes sense to sell it for a lower price because they've got this huge, investment that they're going to have to make to tap into the water, the sewer lines. So things like that, we've been doing a great job, I think, in the northeast part of the community selling lots to Habitat. But, we've really accelerated this process. And then when Bruce got here, it's really picked up the pace much more. So I'm proud to see it, and I'm proud to chair the committee that deals with it. And I really appreciate how everybody comes together to make this happen.
I'm fine with it. Mr. Thompson?
Just in answer to your question, Mr. Cannon, and looking at the letters that were submitted by both Circle Solutions, which were the first 2 homes, and by Mr. Yono, the Harvard Shore homes, they are purchasing them to flip them. So
Right.
they're going to purchase them, put some money into them, and they're paying a pretty heavy purchase price for them, if you think about it, and then they'll invest a lot of money, but they will be selling them.
Okay. We, as a township board, have all agreed since day one with this program that this was a good program for us to be in control of the property. And we still are, and we're getting rid of the big pieces, and that is good. And I concur that if we have 200 pieces that we're cutting the grass on and maintaining, that we can put back on the tax roll and make it a better neighborhood for people. Let's continue doing that.
Right.
Just by way of example, Broad Acres, I had a flashback to say what house was this, because I grew up a street away from there, and they're like, oh, it was this one, that's why it's a big lot, and yes, this could be split, and we could actually build 2 houses on this lot that's been sitting there vacant for quite a long time. So it's really good to see, and it's good to see the investment. I think it also speaks to Clinton Township as a good place where people are looking to say, we want to invest in this community to build homes, and, I'll pick up vacant lots and look for opportunities.
Okay.
Move to approve the request of the committee.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. West. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Sam Bushel, 18546 Wayland Drive. Because these were companies that were bidding on this first three houses, one and one the other, do they have a track record in Clinton Township for actually following through, doing a quality job, and flipping the houses? Because I know in my neighborhood, there's been a lot of house flipping, and they've done a really nice job. I just don't know what the companies are.
Do you know, Mr. Thompson?
Unfortunately, I have not been in the township long enough to know if either of these have constructed in the past, so I don't know if
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Miller knows.
I can say I've not heard of the companies, but I can also say that as the building director, we will follow through to make sure they meet all the necessary requirements of the building code to make them occupiable and bring them up to standard.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was just, I think it would be good for the township to, there are so many house flippers in the, the south end, and most of them are doing a great job. But I think it's obvious that the township should keep track of the companies, which ones are doing quality jobs, which ones aren't. And some of the flippers in my neighborhood, the houses that got flipped and are just as rentals are not nearly as nice as the ones that they flipped to sell, so.
Thank you. I can assure you that our building department will fly spec every one of these homes.
And if I could add, having worked at the county treasurer's office and being very familiar with a lot of these folks that are trying to pick up these, great deals and then, do a quick, sell, things like that. One of the things is, they don't have a track record with us currently, but we know that they don't have a bad track record. I'm not familiar with them from having any negative experiences at the county with them. And then also, Clinton Township, when we take these out to bid, we do not have to accept the highest bidder. In fact, we didn't take the highest bidder years ago on a house. We were sued, and we prevailed in court because we thought the second bidder was more of a more solid investment for the community than the first bidder, and the courts agreed with that. So.
If I remember that right, it was someone who was going to physically live in the home, too.
Yep. Versus someone, well, no, it was Baker College buying the property
Oh, yeah.
versus somebody who didn't have a great.
But there were other, like principal residents, that do that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Argona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8, resolution revising the general fee schedule for the Fire Prevention Code.
Dear Honorable Board members, the Clinton Township Department of Fire Rescue EMS is seeking a revision to the general fee schedule 209.10, parent A, parent 4, annual fire inspection fees. Included is the proposed revision for introductory purposes. It is the proposed revisions. If the proposed revisions are acceptable, the fire department will continue with adoption of the revisions at the following board meeting. Sincerely, Tim Duncan, Clinton Township Fire Chief.
And Mr. Miller will coordinate with the fire department because that's where this will all begin. We've been providing services for years through the fire department and not charging a fee. This is merely a user fee and still far below surrounding communities. Is there a motion to approve?
Is this a motion to introduce?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so moved to introduce.
Support.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Argona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. And item 9, request to participate in the Michigan State University Extension and County Gypsy Moth Program.
Okay, so we met with Terry Gibb from MSU Extension to discuss the gypsy moth concern in Clinton Township. MSU Extension and the county would like to partner with the township to spray for gypsy moths this spring in the area shown on the attached map. Based on our conversation, the estimated cost to the township would be $40,000. Ms. Gibb will be at the township board meeting this evening to address any questions you may have regarding this matter. Sincerely, Mary Bednar, Director for the Department of Public Services.
Usually when Terry Gibb calls, she has good news. This time she wasn't giving us good news. We did not win the lottery in this case. We were one of 2 communities that have been identified as having a potential to have a gypsy moth problem. There are other communities in Oakland County that have already secured a company to do the work so we can get a firm price, and we know we're getting the best price. But we, as a board, have to decide whether or not to spend $40,000 to spray this area. And Terry, you've got to tell us if the airplane can actually fly the area, because I heard there was some conflict over that. that they may not be able to. And the third piece to the puzzle is that we're being told, and Mrs. Bednar helped me out one way or the other, if there's a lot of rain or a lot of heat in the spring, that eliminates the gypsy moth problem without having to pay to spray. But there's only a short window, according to Terry, that we have to make this decision.
So there is an article attached to the board packet that Michigan State Extension, different Michigan State Extension, put together saying that, meaning a different area, not, different offices, saying that if it, there's studies that show that gypsy moth will basically flourish in drought conditions. And this article goes on to talk about if it's not a drought condition, then you don't need to spray because the gypsy moth can't flourish type idea. I know, Terry, we brought it up and you were looking into that, so I'll let her speak to that. One of the biggest problems we have is we need to set up a contractor to be able to get in there in the right time frame. In the meantime, we're waiting to see what Mother Nature does. I'm not sure that, coincides, because you can't say to a contractor, well, we might sign a contract with you, but we have to wait, and by the way, get all the product and get ready to go in case it's dry, So, Terry, I'll turn it over to you to be able to finish the questions.
Okay, a couple of things. I had not seen that article until you sent it to me, and I didn't interpret it the way you did. And we've been spraying in the county from 1992 to 2009. It was the last time we sprayed. So it's been 10 years. I haven't been here in 10 years for this, so that's good. And there was only 1 or 2 years of all that time that we did not spray, and it did not, amount of rain didn't impact it one way or the other. If you've got them, you've got them. They're going to hatch, they're going to eat, they're going to deposit all over the place, and that's the big thing. So I don't think the weather at this point, from that standpoint. I do know Mr. Brookhalt, and he's one of our horticulture educators over in Washtenaw County, and I trust him implicitly, but that I didn't interpret it that if we get a lot of rain, you won't need to spray. It just said that drought conditions had an impact. It didn't say that rain had an impact, a lot of rain. So, and I think that is one of the reasons why it's happening, because it's been a number of years since anybody in the state has sprayed. And I think that one of the natural funguses that attacks BT, because there haven't been any spraying and the moth population has been really low. I think probably the entomophaga, which is the fungus, is down, and that's why we're seeing an increase this year, because Oakland County, Bay County, they're in Washtenaw County, they're in several counties on the west side of the state. Lansing is spraying. It's like just all of a sudden just reappeared, and that's kind of what it does. It's a very cyclical pest, and what I mean is it'll go along, it'll increase, and you'll have huge outbreaks, and then it'll literally, if it's too high, it crashes itself, and it goes down real low, and then it does this. And what we do is we're trying to take this out, because when they're bad, they're very bad, and unfortunately, they are very bad in Clinton Township. And we got the call, first call we got was last June or July in Clinton Township. And when we went out to visit, he said they were everywhere. He said the caterpillars were everywhere. By the time our person got out, because she's part-time, she said they could not stand outside. The moths were so bad. They were batting moths everywhere.
Terry, you've convinced me. None of us would want to live under those conditions. So it would be my recommendation to the board that we authorize spending up to $40,000 to eradicate this problem that's in our community. That's a certainty that we would be ridding ourselves of this pest problem. Terry?
You don't eradicate gypsy moth. I need to correct that. What you do is you suppress them.
Suppress them.
Okay?
I'll
I just
support
want
your
people to
motion.
think that, it's going to be one and done, because it won't be. It'll be done for this year.
I read the article very carefully that Mrs. Bednar provided, and I wanted to not have to spend $40,000, but I just can't do that to our residents. So that my motion's on the floor, it's been supported. Anyone wishes to speak to it? Mrs. West?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Terry, for the planes that are going to fly over, as I, get this picture, what exactly are they dropping and what kind of harm can that be to people, kids, pets, asthmatics, people on oxygen? I could go on and on and on.
I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 99% sure that we'll be using fixed wing as opposed to helicopter. That's the first thing. Second thing is they will be flying, and I want to make this so everybody understands, they will be flying literally on the treetops. They're that close. So we will be notifying every resident in the spray block so that they don't think that they're being terror bombed. And what they will be spraying, it's called Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT. And that is a naturally occurring something, fungus, whatever, bacteria that's found in the ground. Any of you either intentionally or unintentionally ate dirt as a kid? Anybody?
I'll admit to it.
Okay, then you have all eaten BT, because BT is found in the soil. And it is a very target specific, that's why it's been used, because it only impacts the moth, and it only impacts the moth at a certain point. If it gets sprayed too soon and the moths are, and the caterpillars are too small, they won't get up in the tree to get to it. If it gets beyond the second instar or third instar, it's been 10 years, folks, then they're too big and it won't impact them. And it has no impact on humans, pets, fish, birds, beneficial insects. It's nothing. Nothing at all. It does not impact any of those. And another thing is we also spray First Light. We're lifting off at dawn. So this will all be done probably by whenever First Light is. I'm not a morning person, but probably by 6:30 or 7 maybe.
Oh, so they get to hear the planes overhead and the trees
Yeah.
as they wake up.
Right.
How long does this BT stay around? I mean, does it?
Once it is, and that's why there are some very specific conditions we have to do it under. No threat of rain, low humidity, no wind, so it doesn't blow around. There are several factors that we need to look at. But once it's up there, it takes an hour or two for it to dry, and then it's there. It's on the leaves. And as the caterpillars go up and down, they go up and they eat, they ingest it, they come down, and then hopefully they do what we want them to and die.
Thank you.
Mr. Aragona?
Yeah, thank you for being here, Terry. You answered one of my questions. Dawn is basically when they're going to come by and spray, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe we talked about this about 2 months ago. You kind of described this project to me, so I thank you for that. I think it's over 2 days, you said, at that point?
Pardon me?
I think it's over 2 days, you said at that point, correct? This is not a one-day thing, this is a 2-day
Oh,
thing?
no, it will be done, and we'll probably be done, the whole spray will be done for this many acres, maybe an hour.
In just 1 hour, and then we're good?
That'll be it. They'll go
Okay.
up at First Light, they'll do Shelby, they'll do Clinton, and then they will come down, they'll check what they've used, and then they're done.
And then I believe you said residents, if they don't happen to see something, what they're going to notice is, like if they leave a car or a patio furniture out there, they might see like a light dusting, like a light white dusting.
They might, yeah.
All right, so we just might want to make sure that that's on our, social media as well as our township website, just letting people know.
And Michigan State will be notifying every resident that's affected.
Well, every resident in the spray blocks,
Exactly. That's affected.
yeah.
And just want to point out real quick, Mr. Keys mentioned that he and I went to a citizen planner course last year, and Terry was kind enough to head that up, and she's very passionate about that, so
Yep.
I appreciate that, so thank you.
Some good snacks.
Very good snacks.
Mr. Kim?
Mr. Gilliam, then Mr. Pearl, then Mrs. Meltzer.
Okay, so Terry, thank you for being here. I'm familiar, obviously, with you and with
Yeah.
MSUE, the MSU Extension Office. And so Ms. West kind of went through the sort of what is this substance that we're spraying, and how is it safe, and it's a naturally occurring bacteria. So I'm somewhat comfortable with that. If you're the person, and MSU is backing this and saying this is a product that's safe, but at the same time, who knew what PFAS was prior to
Yes,
all this
another one,
stuff.
right.
So you can see why, people out there would be uneasy by it. So MSU would want to support.
Yeah, just when we first started back in 1992, we didn't have GPS and GIS and all that stuff. So literally how we identified spray blocks is we had to get volunteers or staff to go out, and if it was like a rectangle like this, the spray block, we would literally have somebody out there with balloons, and they'd have balloon or yellow balloons up in each spot, and if something happened and they had to put down someplace, they would have red balloons. So there were actually people in the spray blocks in the beginning when they were being sprayed. Don't have to do that anymore because the GIS and GPS are just really great.
So you're actually somewhat anticipating my next
I didn't know.
question, because it's regarding the area. This is north of 16 Mile Road, so North Nunley, from Gratiot on over to Mulberry Street. And so as you head towards Groesbeck to the west, it's right down on Mulberry Street. As somebody who runs for office, I know those are two different voting precincts, but there's not that much difference between those two they're also in two different school districts, by the way. One's Chippewa, the other one's Mount Clemens. But other than that, there's not too much difference here between these two different neighborhoods. I mean, these streets are asphalt streets. Mulberry's a tiny asphalt street, just like the rest of them. And why would that be the border? Why would the Gypsy Moss have discriminated on the east side versus the west? I mean, it's kind of
As in the past, what we have done, because it's been successful for us, is we followed this year, as we have in the past, MDARD protocols and procedures, whatever, how we did it in the past when we had money from the state, which we don't unfortunately now, but, and so that's why you see this strange. Number one, because they took it out, and by doing their timed walks, they checked, and if there weren't enough egg masses in their timed walk, it was not included. That's the first thing. And the second thing, people probably wonder, and in fact, Supervisor Cannon originally asked me, and then he figured out the answer himself, why this Gratiot border is so jagged. And the reason being is because one of the people that was doing the surveying to get these acres, MDARD, you didn't spray commercial.
Yeah.
And that's why it's jagged, because this is all commercial property.
Right, it's the farmer's market, it's the, it's the.
Just like up in Shelby Township, it's pretty much a square, except for there's one spot like this that's out of 23 Mile Road, which is going back in, but it is a commercial property. So
But I'm still
our
not clear on the
surveyor
other
took
side.
it out.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense, but the other side doesn't. Mulberry Street,
Well, it's just, they didn't find enough to warrant spraying over there. And not being out there, I can't tell you for sure. They maybe didn't find anything over there. Because there is like a ground zero, and I think it's in the southeast portion.
Okay. And forgive me for not, having done this before, but we literally got this packet this afternoon. So that's why these questions are sort of happening at the board meeting. But then the other, describe the partnership. Describe how this is coming about, the county's role, MSU's role, our role. You said the state funding. Why is the state funding
Well, the state's
up?
not funding now. They did fund, but they have no money left.
So why does it, all right, no money left, but there's still, there's
in the
still
past,
moss,
there was,
right?
Yeah, there was money from the
So-
U.S. Forest Service, and it came down through MDARD, and so we had a partnership between the state, the feds and the state, because U.S. Forest Service, feds, state, county, and communities. Well, now is strictly county and communities, and MSU Extension is administering, supervising, whatever you want to call it, the program. And how this is going to work, I'm guessing, and you're probably the first to hear this, because we think we have an estimate on what it's going to cost, and you'll be under your amount. And
We like to hear that.
but normally in the past, what we have done, we have done letters of agreement between the communities and the county, and then then the communities paid the county, and then the county contracted with the spray applicator, okay? That may happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think what we're going to have to do this year, because we are on a really, we're like 3 months behind right now getting stuff done. I should have been here in January. If anybody remember, you might remember, I used to come in January to talk about this. So we are really behind the 8 ball here. And as you may know, that the county exec's office can approve a contract up to $35,000. This is going to be more than $35,000. So what we may need to do, I have to talk with Deputy Exec Rhea and see, but we talked about this briefly, and so we may do 3 separate contracts. One between the applicator and Clinton, one between the applicator and Shelby, and one between the applicator and the county, because it's my understanding, unless something changes, in addition to covering all the admin costs at the county, they are going to kick in a few dollars, I don't know how much, toward the spray application as well. So it'll be a little bit less than what I'm anticipating right now for you. But that, in order to move this as quickly as possible, we may have to do it that way, because then we don't have to take it, the board doesn't have to approve, and that'll save us a couple weeks.
Okay. So this is basically Clinton Township paying for this, and there might be some money kicked in from the county.
There
But you're in
will
a
be
sense-
some money. I can't tell
There
you
will
how
be.
much, but there will be.
Okay.
John Paul Ray and I have already talked, and there will be some. I can't tell you how much because I don't know that yet, but there will be some. So it'll be a little bit less than what I'm guessing right now you'll be paying.
Okay. Who does these walks and goes out and does the,
Actually, we have 2 people that are doing it. One of them, Linda Stout, she is, we hired her back in 2004. 2004, whatever, to do Gypsy Moth. So she is very familiar with this, and she retired a couple years ago, and I managed to convince her to come back and help coordinate this program again, especially since we were so far behind the 8 ball. She can just fall right in, and she knows what has to happen. And then our current consumer horticulture program assistant is working with her to get it done. And actually, Linda, since she lives in Shelby, will be monitoring Hatch in Shelby, and Karen Burke will be monitoring Clinton Township.
Okay. So, all right, and I'm going to close on this. So let's say there's a resident over on Drexel Street, but they happen to be on the west side of Mulberry, and they see gypsy moths. Can they go buy this substance and perhaps protect their trees, or?
I don't think they can buy it. I think it has to be done by an applicator. I do know that it's either West Bloomfield or Bloomfield Township is doing some kind of ground spray. I have never heard that is effective, but I do know over in Shelby in past years, for some reasons that they've had to, several residents have contracted for a ground spray. But if they do have, they think they might have it, if they can let us get contact extension, because I have a gentleman in today from Shelby Township at 21 in Van Dyke, and I think I have gypsy moth. Well, that's, if you haven't seen their map, but they're not in the spray block. So what I said is, give me your name, address, and phone number. When she's out monitoring the hatch at 23 in Van Dyke, it'll take her no time at all to give them a call and go down and actually check it out. And while Karen is in the spray block, she can go over and check that out. And if they do indeed have it, she can give them some things that will help. It won't be as effective, but it will help minimize some of it.
So I think that's an important component, because we're having to do this education component to this, to let these residents know that, hey, there's going to be airplanes flying over your house, dumping substances on your property. So along with that, I think a necessary component is to say to other people, this is an important thing to do. Gypsy moth is a real problem, and if you encounter this, this is what you should do. So I'm going to ask you, because you're the one administering this program, if you can help provide us that information as well, so that we can inform our residents of some steps that they can take if they're not in the spray area.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
because, and just to let you know that.
Without having to have somebody, who's a walking monitor determining these areas coming out, they can kind of do it on their own.
Right.
I think that's an important part of
Yeah,
this.
and we do have the brochure that I gave you, we've updated, so that's available. We can
Okay.
give that to people, and it pretty much answers all the basic questions. That's available to anybody. If you want, you can put that on your website or do whatever. I'm
We
fine with
will.
that. It's
But,
public domain.
but it doesn't say,
And we know
What to
that you
do.
are going to mail to
Yeah.
everyone, too, so there will be a lot of information
but it
disseminated.
does, but it doesn't say what to do. It just says to call MSUE.
Well.
Which, okay, you know,
Call us, we'll tell you.
let's get them the information directly without, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well,
It's always good to call MSUE because I know the great resources you provide, but at the same time, we can be direct and say, if you think you have this, here's some steps you could take.
And what to, and I guess one of the important things is what isn't gypsy moth. We get a lot of calls. I have gypsy moth. I have gypsy moth. Turns out they have eastern tet caterpillar, not gypsy moth. So that's one of the things. And a lot of times they don't know the difference. So that is why we'll go out and we'll put together a list and we'll give them information, because anybody who called us goes on the list for surveying next fall automatically, like the man at 21 in Van Dyke. He's on. He gave us name, address. We'll go out and visit him, and he'll be on the list to be surveyed next year.
So that's actually two things. It's important to call MSUE, but also here's some steps you can take.
Right.
Okay, because then that gets you on the list for next year. Point taken, appreciate it. But it'd be great if we could do all three, right? Okay, thanks.
Mrs. Meltzer?
Actually, all my questions were answered based on what everybody else has said, so, but it's great to see you, Terry, as always, and I too took the Citizens Planner course, and gosh, that was way back in the 90s, early 90s, so that was
Yeah.
right when you started.
Mr. Pearl?
Yeah, just a quick question. You decided this one area in Clinton Township, is that because of the number of calls? Is that what I'm hearing?
And it started because of a call, and they were so heavily infested. That's when we went back and we decided to increase our efforts. We have been out surveying every year, even though we haven't sprayed since 2009. We have been out to some of the known areas. Thousand Oaks is another one. If it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be there. Surprisingly, it wasn't this time. In fact, when I first heard that we had it in Clinton Township, I would have bet money it was there. And then to find out it was down here, that was surprising to me. But we have been monitoring every year, even though we haven't sprayed, just to stay on top of this. And so then when it started, then in the fall, when we go out doing our monitoring, we find them, and then we set up the timed walks and counting the egg masses, and this is what we came up with. If they're at the minimum number that you need or above, they chart that, and if it's below, then they'll let it go. But just to let you know that female moths don't fly. They're the ones that lay the egg masses. They don't fly, but the male does. And the male travels many, many miles in some cases to get to the female. Surprise, surprise. And
There's a reason why they have ladies' night at the bar.
so that doesn't mean, and I guess that's the point I want to make is that this is really being very proactive, because this is not going to go away on its own. I mean, it might in a few years, 5, 10 years, it might crash, but it's not going away, and it's going to spread.
Well, what will crash are all the trees on the streets.
And that's another problem. It does defoliate, and this is a fairly heavy infestation, it can defoliate the trees. And if it defoliates a tree 40% or more, and the weather conditions are good, it will relief. But the relief uses the overwinter reserves. So I have to tell you, because people say, oh, gypsy moth kills tree. No, the gypsy moth does not kill the tree. What it does is it weakens the tree and allows other predators and fungus and insects to get in, and that's what kills the tree.
We're just recovering from the ash borer disease that killed. I know we tried treating it for 8 years. And we still ended up taking down, after spending thousands of dollars, we ended up taking down hundreds of ash trees.
Yeah.
So I hope we're more successful with this. I think I've seen some in my backyard of this, because the cocoon shape and it on the
Yeah,
leaf.
it's about this big, it's about the size of a quarter, and in that egg mass can be up to 1,000 caterpillars in 1 quarter. So it's, You have 2 or 3 of those, and you've got to,
Oh, my God.
you're going to have a lot of,
I get
I
rid
am
of it.
not a bug person.
you're not a bug lady, eh?
Thank you.
Mr. Keys?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair to Ms. Bednar, I'm excited to hear what you have to say. You look eager.
Well, just if we do proceed with this, we need to not exceed the 40,000. That number did come from a contract that was bid out. And the reason why they think that the county can get that number down, so the 40,000 is based on a bid amount. But the reason they think they can get it down is because the contract didn't have the same size of acreage. So the whole idea of economies of scale, that the contractor might be able to do it for cheaper, that's where the county is actually negotiating with them right now. So that's why Terry doesn't have that number. But because of the timing and the criticality, we would need to approve not to exceed 40,000. But we would also need to include in that motion amendment to the budget, because this was not budgeted.
That's correct.
Thank you, Ms. Bednar, and thank you for the presentation. I think I've learned more about moss tonight than any other time in my life.
And you
so,
want to know.
Yeah.
More than you ever wanted to know, right?
The couple of questions I had about the relationship with the county and MSU Extension were already answered, so I appreciate fellow board members asking those. The only caveat or concern I have here, it sounds like the county is going to be the one to select the contractor at the end of the day. Is that correct, Ms. Bednar, or would
Well,
that?
my understanding was the county would hold the contract and then they would bill us. It sounds like it might be a little bit different, but yes, we're not doing any, all our involvement is to approve this and
Yeah.
pay for it so that we don't have this infestation of gypsy moth.
Yeah, we were originally hoping to tag onto Rochester Hills because they're spraying and they're using Al's aerial service. But unfortunately, we couldn't get things rolling fast enough. But because they did bid it out, county purchasing was able to use that to do that. So we will be using, we will be using Al's aerial service. So, and I haven't gone back in our records to see if we've used them before, but they do sound familiar, so I think we have.
And just to clarify, that was bid out by the county.
No. The county is sort of using Rochester Hills bid.
It's like when we come with equipment and we
Right.
say they're honoring Milford's price.
Got it, understood.
But in this case, they're using the Rochester Hills, and they're hoping to come in cheaper because of the amount of acreage that ourselves and Shelby Township have. Does that-
Thank you, Mr.
Correct.
Chair.
Yeah,
Mr.
we have
Argona?
284 versus Rochester Hills, which has about 60. So
So Rochester already approved this through Al's, correct?
Rochester is a go.
And then did Shelby already approve this at 40,000?
No, because Shelby only has half the acreage that you have.
Oh, okay. All right.
They've only got about 98 acres, and you've got 184. So they approved up to, not to exceed 20,000, because they have half the acreage that you have.
Okay,
so.
yep. Okay.
Good.
Mr. Gaines, just one last note.
Okay.
Ms. Meltzer, could you get these documents onto the public packet? I believe your staff or Ms. Bednar's staff did a great job of getting us the information in a timely manner today, but I'd like to get it online for the public so they can see that district.
Yeah, we just got the updated packet.
Yeah, I believe Sally did put it through that agenda management as well.
It's not on there now.
No.
Okay.
But we'll get it. We'll
Okay,
definitely-
sorry, I thought we were trying to do that.
That's okay. Sometimes when things are added last minute, they don't get pushed into it because then it has to start, then you have to redevelop the whole process. And our wonderful secretary would appreciate that, I don't think, and I don't blame her.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor not to exceed $40,000.
So moved.
No,
No,
it's
you
already
did
on
have
the
one.
floor.
Oh, it's on the floor?
And you
Floor
already
And
seconded.
supported by Mr.
I
Keys.
supported it.
No,
Been so long ago.
well, in the beginning, it was you, Mr. Cannon, and then Mr. Pearl that had already supported.
No, Mr. Keys supported it.
Mr. Keys,
Mr. Dolan?
Based on the comments on the budget, you can either amend and add the budget adjustment as part of this motion, or you'll have to follow with the motion on the budget adjustment after it.
Okay. It's the same either way.
It's not part of the budget, so you need to amend the budget.
Every so often, we adjust the budget, and this simply will be one item as part of that adjustment. Everyone will understand why. And I appreciate the support because I do believe that our residents deserve that protection. and I do believe they need the education that you're going to help us provide them. So roll call, please.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Item 10, request approval to install street light at Cass and Little Road.
Dear members of the board, I've received a request for one street light to be installed at Cass Avenue and Little Road. Attached are the cost estimate and the agreement from the Detroit Edison Company to perform the work. The estimate is for one 136-watt LED light and one new support arm. The light will be located in the thoroughfare, and therefore the cost of $649.33 will be the responsibility of the township. I am in agreement with the installation of this light and recommend your approval. Sincerely, Mary Bednar, Director for Department of Public Services.
Those who drive that area know that it gets very dark at night, and the residents will appreciate that.
So move to approve.
Support.
Mr. Keys?
Yeah, just as a quick point of information for myself, when these types of requests come through, is this the typical way that they're handled, where it sounds like a resident reached out or a business owner reached out, and the township made the assessment that it was an improvement for the entire community, and so that's why the township would be paying for it, rather than an SAD or some type of process that puts it on the resident?
There would be no residents that we could charge.
Especially with this property, yeah, that makes sense.
Cemetery won't pay for it.
Yeah, right. And is there any, is this the, what is, I'm trying to find another example where we've done this in the township. I don't think I've been on the board since we've done that, so
Right
that's
by
where
your street.
Yeah. we
on
did.
Grandy.
We did.
Yeah, but, so if there's, I'll leave it there. Mary.
We've actually done this numerous times in
Okay.
the past several years.
Okay.
You know, sometimes they're an SAD, and typically those would be within a subdivision. So someone, an organization, a homeowners association wants to put lights, you know, say every fourth lot to illuminate their street. You know, a lot of people think that's good for safety and stuff, but that would be then assessed to everyone that's in that subdivision. On thoroughfares, that's when the township steps in. So I believe Grandy, we did one recently, Partridge Creek Boulevard at Romeo Plank. I want to say on Utica Road, by Brookstone, you know. But how the process works is they notify typically the clerk's office or our office, but because we don't know if it's going to be an SAD or not until we know what the request is. So they usually fill out like an SAD application. From there, just because it says SAD doesn't mean it will be.
Okay.
At that point, we get it. Now, the costs and stuff actually gets, we send to DTE. They go out, they say it needs a special support arm, they say we need this voltage and we need this, and they come back with us and tell us. And then at that point, we say, yep, it's an SAD, no, you know, if it's an SAD, we take it, give it to the residents. If not, we bring it right here to the board. So that's the process that goes through. I will tell you this, DTE is very slow sometimes in getting us this, just depending on the time of year. Has there been storms and stuff? I mean, I've had stuff come in, it's been almost a year before we get an answer from them. And other times we get it right away. So I ask people if they are going to pursue it, be patient. It's okay to follow through and find out, but it does sometimes take some time. And just because we've approved it doesn't mean it's going in tomorrow either. Now DTE is going to order everything. So patience is important.
I appreciate the explanation, and I think that we have to be proactive and reactive when this happens, because there are spots in the township that you put a little bit of light there, and it's really going to change the economic development, the community. I mean, Groesbeck's a perfect example, where the parts of Groesbeck that are lit up, there are people in there, there's people shopping, but when you get to the Rite Aid at 16 in Groesbeck and the entire parking lot's, you know, dark, it creates an unwelcoming environment, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
A roll call?
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. And item 11, bid award, Groesbeck water main replacement.
Dear board members, on March 26, 2019, the Charter Township of Clinton's clerk's office received and processed a total of 5 bids for the above referenced project. 2 trenchless water main replacement options, pipe bursting, and CIPP lining were part of this bid. Our office checked the tabulation of each bid option submitted, and the low bidder is Lawrence M. Clark, Inc. of Belleville, Michigan, in the amount of $1,674,847.98. Their bid is for the pipe bursting water main replacement option. A copy of the final bid tabulations are attached with this letter. The project consists of the installation of a new 12-inch diameter water main between Metropolitan Parkway and 15 Mile Road, along with the west side of Groesbeck Highway. As a condition of the bid requirements, prospective bidders were required to be pre-qualified for water main pipe bursting or water main CIPP lining. Lawrence M. Clark, Inc. provided the necessary pre-qualification information to be considered for bid award. The bid results were reviewed with the Director of Public Services and Township personnel. Based upon the bid submitted and conditions noted above, we recommend that the Groesbeck water main replacement be awarded to Lawrence M. Clark, Inc., located at 50850 Bemis Road, Belleville, Michigan 48111, in the amount of $1,674,847.98. Sincerely, Scott Chabot from AEW, Project Manager.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Pearl. Roll call, please.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Item 12, Heritage Estates Phase 1 deck and door replacement.
Dear board members, the Heritage Estates Committee met on March 25th to review the bids received for the Phase 1 deck recladding project, which also includes door wall and furnace door replacements at Heritage Estates. Based upon cost comparisons, the base bid was found to be the most cost-effective method to proceed with. It is our unanimously recommendation that the project be awarded to the Meridian Contracting Group for $225,250. Please see the attached recommendation letter from Mr. Ronald Syme from Wakely Associates for the breakdown of bidders and costs. I therefore request the board approve the contract attached, which was drafted by Wakely Associates and reviewed by our attorney, Jack Dolan. The work is budgeted and will be paid out of the Senior Housing Fund. Thank you for your consideration of this recommendation. Sincerely, Ken Pearl, Chairman for Heritage Estates Committee. That was Ronald Sim, right? Not Syme, I'm sorry. Ronald Sims.
Thank you. Mr. Pearl, I know you have a sample.
Yeah, about a year ago, we redid a deck using this material. It's a plastic, it's called Gorilla. You want to look at it?
Oh, what?
We were looking for something to enclose the existing decks. They're in pretty bad shape. They really haven't been stained or painted for the 25 years they've been there. So I'll show you some pictures. This is what they look like.
Thank you.
We're concerned about the integrity of the deck. I met Building Director Barry Miller and our DPW Assistant Superintendent Brian Gerard and his staff out there to look at how the deck has handled itself in the year, and it's pretty good. I'll show you some pictures of the one that was put in. You'll notice that while the deck board is going to be replaced by this material, this material has allows the water to flow between the planks. This is actually the plank. And instead of it being wood, which we found to be, we bid as alternates, composite wood or Walmanized wood, found out that the cost to reinstall the wood planks on the top of the decks were cost prohibitive because the cost of restaining the whole structure added too much money into it. So this is a forever kind of material. And it's got a trough system in it that takes the water out. So the water doesn't pitch out, it flows in between the slats, which are maybe eighth of an inch separated, and then it goes through the trough that's built into the system. What will enclose, if you're looking at the diagrams, the pictures of it, the rest of the deck is totally enclosed. It'll have a vinyl soffit underneath, and the fascia boards will be replaced going around, and that'll be metal, which has to be put through a brake to bend it and everything, and it'll all match the existing siding the vinyl siding that we put in about 7 or 8 years ago. to seal up the building because of the problems with the siding. So this project, we're only looking at to start with half of a building. There's 4 main buildings out there. So this is an ongoing project. This is the first year that we've actually had money from the fund to budget. This is not being paid for by taxpayer money. It's funded by the Heritage Estates residents funding because the mortgage or the bond was paid off. We have quite a bit of money to use for township things that the board directs and for high maintenance items like this, capital improvements. So we have about a $400,000 budget. If this works out in time, we may bring back the other half of the building this year. So we'd like to, if this works out time-wise, get it done in 4 years. And we won't be spending down that much of what we have in the fund. I think right now we have $1.3 million. Mary Hines looked over the contract, looked over the funding, and is in agreement with the numbers and everything. So any questions, I'll entertain?
Just very quick, I was just looking at the bid sheet, and I was a little confused. So we're going with the base bid, and then
Yeah,
there's
but
the-
if you look at the second letter, which wasn't read in, but there's a second letter that explains what happened. They actually didn't look at their addendums correctly, and they bid too many units.
Okay.
So the
I knew there was
addendum
something off.
exactly explained how many units by unit number, and they looked at the drawings and didn't, so they both bid 54 units instead of what's going to be 38.
Understood.
So in addition, the door walls are old, they don't work real well, they're being replaced, and that's part of this job, and it'll be reflashed into the new deck, and then the furnace doors, which are rotted out because of being old, they're being replaced too, they're exterior doors. So we're getting new decks and new windows, or new door wall and furnace doors for 38 units. Obviously, 25 are, I believe, decks, and the rest are windows.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion?
Mr. Cannon? Oh, thank you. I just have to say, in looking at the pictures and also the material you
You
have,
see it?
and knowing all of the problems that you've had to go through, or we've all had to go through over there, good job.
Thank you. If you look at most municipal senior living spaces that were built similar years, and you will see that the worst thing they have is their decks. In looking over the problems, if this isn't sealed up completely, these decks will deteriorate to the point that they will have to be removed or piers built to hold them. So in the future, part of it can be disassembled in looking at the main structure to make sure that it's okay. So we've built that in, and there will be no other maintenance work required by the DPW staff to take care of these. Once they're totally enclosed, they'll look beautiful, they'll function well for the people, and there'll be no other work to be done on them.
No maintenance.
Good job.
Mr. Aragona?
Yeah, real quick, Mr. Supervisor, I just want to thank Ms. Bednar for her work on the committee. I also sit on the Heritage Estates Committee. Mr. Pearl's the chairman, and this is kind of what he does for a living. And I think he's done a great job. He's kept me apprised of everything that's going on. We've met on it plenty of times. Settling on this particular deck wasn't an immediate one. We kind of went back and forth between normal wood decking and this one. But Mr. Pearl's allowed me to ask plenty of questions. I've learned a lot through this process, so I just want to say good job, and thank you very much for teaching me a thing or two.
You know, the staff, Mary Bednar, Brian Gerard, and his staff,
course,
Barry,
yep.
everybody put a lot of effort into this.
Mr. Cannon, just real briefly. So I asked this at the staff meeting, and neither of you were there. So as a result, there's, so the township senior, buildings, and then there's a private management company, and then there's the committee. And so how does the word get out to the residents? And, one of these has been replaced, have the residents been informed as to which ones are being done? You
Well,
know,
each-
how does that process work in terms of keeping
You know, we
folks?
started with probably the worst deck in the building.
Yeah.
And that's, what we used as an example, what you saw. And then we interviewed the resident and everything after, a year later to see how they liked it and whatever. They'll all be notified by the management company, each individual. We've already picked the number of surrounding it. We kept it where the contractor's going to work in the same area, first floor, second floor, third floor, in one elevation and around the corner on the other. They're not
Right.
going to be all over the place. So we'll notify each resident, and then it'll, a lot of the work will be done from outside on scaffolding, but there may be access in.
Yeah, I mean,
be
these folks are
access.
going to have to go into their places. and
So
stuff, yeah.
that's what the management company will interface, and then with the residents to make sure that everybody's notified, just like when we did their furnaces. Remember when we had to replace all the furnaces, and we did a lot of hot water tanks and stuff? They were all notified. And we're going to do this in a logical way and try to get it done as efficiently as possible.
Excellent. Thank you for your work on that.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor,
Not yet.
So moved.
Support.
supported by Mr. Gilliam.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes. Somebody say something?
No, I don't know. Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Argona?
Yes.
Mrs. Masser, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. And item 13, introduction of Township Ordinance 452, odor control. This is something that Mr. Dolan put together after having extensive discussions with Mr. Miller from the Building Department.
I can give some background on it if you like, Mr.
Please.
Cannon.
Well, what I'd like to do is just talk about why we're doing this. We're doing this because recreational marijuana is going to be legal soon in Michigan. It already is, so people will be able to consume marijuana in their backyards, and we're anticipating that not all the neighbors are going to like it if you have a lot of people over in your backyard and are smoking marijuana. So what this ordinance allows us to do is to buy a machine that will allow the building department to monitor odors. The machine is about a $10,000 investment. If we receive multiple complaints from a residents, we will inspect, and we do have a method to control it. Mr. Dolan, you have the floor.
Well, you pretty much summed it up. The machine is called the Nasal Ranger Package. The machine itself is $2,750. There's basically a training package for up to 5 users at a $1,350. Then there are some additional supplemental cartridges, masks, and so forth that add some further cost. Essentially, what it is it allows us to go out and to monitor and to actually measure an odor. If you read the ordinance, what we're doing is we're setting up a process whereby odor complaints can be tracked. And also what we intend to do is we intend to not only issue potentially a violation in the instance of an offense, but also if there are repeat offenses, 3 offenses within 10 days, we would actually require an odor mitigation plan. So there would be an affirmative requirement on the part of the issuer of the odors to come forward with a mitigation plan that has to be filed. There'll have to be a odor specialist retained on their behalf to show how they intend to correct the problem. So we think that we have a ordinance that we hope will work well. The machine that we're asking to be used, I believe, is currently being used in the city of Denver. As many know, there have been states that have already approved recreational marijuana and have had to deal with these types of issues. Colorado is one of them. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve and have something in place. This will apply, of course, not just to marijuana odors, but to other odors as well.
Mr. Cannon?
Hold on, I think Mr. Miller then.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I looked into the Nasal Ranger. It seems to be, like I said, I talked to Denver. Denver is using that. The biggest thing on this is obviously it's the people in the backyard having a few friends over. Unfortunately, the building department is closed after 4:30, and that's probably not something we will be partaking in. It might be complaints that police may endure. This is more, the machine is more for us to be able to, when we get, we are already getting neighbor complaints that the gentleman or the person next door is growing in their house, and they haven't done the right thing to air scrub add the proper ventilation within the house so that the neighborhood doesn't get to enjoy what they're growing. So at this point, this will give us a tool to be able to know that this is what they're doing. It's beyond the requirements of what the ordinance is, and it would also give us a tool to be able to possibly issue violations based on what we know is happening within the house, possibly get warrants to go in the house to see how much they're growing, things of that nature. There's just it gives us a lot of tools to move forward with further enforcement of electrical code violations, things of that nature as well.
Thank you. Mrs. West?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What about for, Mr. Dolan, what about for people who have a medical card? And they might be sitting outside and smoking their marijuana
Well,
for medicinal purposes?
Yeah, you're entitled to smoke marijuana under the law that was enacted as a result of the ballot initiative that's now a codified law under the state statutes. But just because you are entitled to use marijuana, it doesn't mean that you have an absolute right to use it in a way that unreasonably interferes with other people. So, you could, if you basically want to consume marijuana, you have to be respectful of surrounding property owners and their rights as well. You can smoke your marijuana in a way so that you don't let the marijuana smoke and odors, interfere with their rights to enjoy their property.
Right. Which, I kind of find some irony here with, we don't want the smell, but yet we have people who are still smoking cigarettes, and that's far, far more harmful than the smell. So I just thought I would throw that in there.
Well,
Far more harmful.
it's not to say that under the proper circumstances, it couldn't be used for, as I mentioned, this is not specific to marijuana. This machine detects odors in the air, so it can detect tobacco odors, it can detect other odors as well. Obviously, some years ago, we had some issues with regard to odors coming from areas in the south end of the township that revolved around the composting operation.
Yes.
It can be used for something like that as well.
I remember that. Well, also, I've received phone calls from this one neighborhood where the people are burning what they'd like to think are leaves, but I think there's, according to a couple of the people, there's tires and you name it, they have that all in there, so.
We have obviously, just to comment on that, it goes beyond the odor issue, but we already have on file, we already have on file an open burning ordinance in situations like that could be applied.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Keys?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and I'm glad, just for clarification, we're just introducing this to the public, and we'll be voting on it at the next meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Kane?
That's correct.
So the couple questions that came to mind just with the conversation, so Mr. Dolan, am I right to assume then, if a neighbor is smoking a cigarette in the backyard and the smell is bothering me, that I do have this as a mechanism to call the building department and say that my backyard reeks of tobacco and I'd like you to investigate that odor? Am I right in thinking that this ordinance would help me with that?
Yes, that could be applied in that situation, but of course, we always try to act reasonably in enforcement settings, so.
And that gets to my major concern, and that's enforcement. Mr. Miller, I don't know that we've given you enough resources and tools to actually enforce additional code enforcements in our township. You and I have had many discussions where, I think it was just this last winter where we had one of the coldest days of the year where we were trying to get sidewalks plowed on Gratiot, and you didn't have at the time the resources of the ordinance officer to go out there and issue those types of citations. Does your department really have the tools right now and the resources to go out on odor complaints at this point?
Well, as for any other things, number one, we are not 911. The building department is not a 911. We don't get notified by dispatch that we have to run out to a site to measure odor. In the past, when there was litigation ongoing with the compost facility, that was a little different. The township did react to calls as quickly as possible, but I would get calls at 4:30 in the afternoon, and we didn't send an inspector out till the morning. We're not paying overtime to any, whether it be part-time or full-time ordinance officials. And I think we do a pretty good job of our ordinance enforcement in the community. With the tools we've been given, we have a full-time ordinance officer. We are part-time gentleman has just started as of April 1st. We get out in the community. There's a presence felt, I believe. I think a number of residents could attest to that. And I think this board has given me adequate tools and employees to pursue that. I mean, as the community ages further, maybe it's a discussion down the road on what we do as a department to add staff, but I think we make do with what we have.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say that you don't have a presence. I think even I've done a ride-along with your staff, and I think the addition of the logo on the truck is a huge benefit to the community, because when residents are outside, they see the presence there. It's not just this random white truck driving by. They actually see it's Clinton Township. So I don't mean to say that with the resources you've been given, we haven't done a good job. My only reservation in adding more to your workload is thinking in the back of my head about those various, ordinance complaints that I've even given to your office that, couldn't be handled because of the time factor of it being after 5 or just the staffing element.
I mean, anything that we can't handle after 4:30 gets addressed by the police, noise complaints, things like that. Dogs barking, those type of things. There are mechanisms in place. Our police department does a fine job of dealing with that. As for, we already get these complaints. We already get these marijuana complaints of people growing within the home. This is nothing new. This just gives us an actual tool. So if we do go out and say, hey, we smell it, we know they're growing in this facility. We knock on the door, we ask them, hey, what are you doing within there? Are you within the ordinance requirements of under 200 square feet in your home? Have you got the proper permits, which at that point we know you haven't, to put that second air handler on the back of your house? It gives us the tools to be able to go to the prosecutor and the judge to get the search warrant to issue the appropriate ticket and get them in court and get them in compliance. It's just more tools, and it's just at this point it's not adding additional work at this point.
Okay.
Maybe once recreational gets full-blown, maybe at that point we deal with more complaints. But
And I think that's what I'm alluding to. I agree with you that walking in the streets of Clinton Township, you'll be able to find a house on a street and smell it, absolutely. But I think this will add a lot more to the workload, in my opinion, and I could be proven wrong, because now we're not just talking about plants in the home. We're saying that anyone that takes a joint into their backyard and lights one up, we have now given a mechanism for their neighbors to call the township and a process in place that if they get 3 of these complaints within 10 days, there could be court action.
That's true, but you also have to look at the fact, we do have an ordinance in place already about odors and smoke and things beyond property lines, even burning, open burning, things of that nature. Those things are not generally handled by my department on a 911 basis. And again, I don't expect that the police department's going to drop everything they're doing to rush out to a site of somebody smoking a cigarette on the back deck, because it's going to be handled on a case-by-case scenario based on level of severity. The complaint will be registered. If they go to our system, it'll be on file. We'll know what we're dealing with based on repetition.
Okay, and then in terms of this technology, now we haven't approved the purchase of this technology yet. We will be getting another request to go ahead and buy this?
Yeah, that would be something I would have to add to the budget. It would be a budget amendment at a later date.
And that's not something you're asking for right now?
No, I'll do a little more research. I've only reached out to one facility that sells this, maybe even look into a couple other monitors to see if there's anything that's as effective.
In your research, what other odors are we talking about? We've mentioned composting. That's an odor that this machine is going to be able to pick up on. Marijuana, tobacco. Is there anything else that in your research has come up?
That's about the extent of what we've looked at.
Was this piece of technology ever explored when the issues on Quinn Road occurred? I mean, we had a huge backlash in this community to talk about the smell. And I remember in our conversations, you would say to me, you know, it's impossible. How can I, you know, enforce this without going and measuring the pile? Every time we go there, there's no way for us to measure the smell other than our own sense of smell.
We were dictated, and this goes way back, but I mean, the county judge, the circuit court judge had basically mandated the reduction in the pile to a level that was acceptable, 20 years ago, I believe, and they were allowed to go back to that level. That's about the best way we can handle it. And I can tell you today, I might get 5 to 10 complaints a year on that facility now, as opposed to 5 to 10 per day. So, I mean, I think most of you can probably attest to the fact that you're not getting the phone calls on that facility, that what's done has helped and we did take them to district court on nuisance odors, and it did stand up. They were fined. But if we keep finding them, it didn't resolve the issue. That's why it escalated to a circuit court level.
And then to Mr. Dolan, it's my understanding that by opting out of this at this time, opting out of recreational.
We're not.
Oh, that's later down. Sorry, I'll save my questions for that. I'm all set, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Cannon, may I just
Yes.
mention something in clarification? Just so we're clear on this, the way this ordinance is set up, a citation, an offense could be issued on a first complaint. If there are 3 or more complaints that are found to have a basis within a 10-day period, then we can proceed and force that individual to file and present a mitigation plan. We also, in the ordinance, can issue an odor citation without having done the measurement process. So we could proceed under either, on either basis, on the basis of the observations of the
Mr. Cannon, to follow up.
the person from the township authorized to issue citations without using the machine or with the machine, just so we're all clear on that.
And actually, that was my clarification. So if the police department were to go on a call and had this issue after 5 o'clock, they don't necessarily have to have this machine to issue a citation or a complaint.
That's correct.
Okay.
But they may be, like I said, the $1,350 covers training of 5 people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. West?
Thank you. Just one real quick question. What did Denver say about how this is working with them? I mean, is the use good? Are they using it a lot? Did they have to buy more? Are they closing a lot of places down? I mean, is it successful?
They're utilizing it. I didn't really get involved in how much they're using it or how many times they've used it. They said it's an effective tool to measure. It will stand up in court if you have to go that far. And that's all I really need to know is if I take readings on this, is this something I can use as a testimony in court that I won't be, that has stood the test already somewhere else?
Thank you.
Most of our residents want to comply with our ordinances and all our laws. There are some who will not, of course. But the intent of the building department is not to penalize, not to coerce, but to get compliance with whatever ordinance is being violated at the time. Voluntary compliance is number one. Mr. Gilliam?
So, first thing, the Denver experience is really, it depends on who you ask. Denver is either it's either Babylon or it's, huge economic development with the streets paved in gold. So it depends on the Denver experience on who you ask. But what I'm trying to figure out, and Jack, help me out with this, please, if you can, through the supervisor to you, what is new and what is existing? What is this ordinance adding that we can't do currently that we need to be able to do, given our new circumstances?
It's really adding two things. It's adding a more objective way of measuring odors through the use of a device that can be, if you get there and the odor's there, you can actually quantify the odor as opposed to it just being the subjective opinion of whoever is smelling the odor. And secondly, it's also adding a process by which, in addition to just getting a citation, if you're a repeat offender, you'll have to actively come forward with a mitigation plan. Those are the two things that are being added.
Okay, so right now, an odor complaint can be enforced.
Correct.
Without this, this is just adding that we now have this objective way of doing this, although we don't need the objective way of doing it, which is what was previously stated. We can do this and issue a citation based upon observations without the machine.
Correct. And you can do it under this ordinance as we could under other ordinance sections as well without the
Yeah.
machine.
So, I mean, basically, people are complicated. People have different feelings and thoughts on this. And, some people are saying, hey, this is my medicine. And other people are saying, I hate the smell of it. And now it all is, it's not your father's marijuana, as they say. The smell is somewhat off the charts these days. But the thing is, what we need to ask people is to be judicious. We need to ask them to say, how, this person's right to do this, and how is it infringing on your rights? And then we have to somehow be the arbitrator of this, and I think it puts us in somewhat of a very difficult position, although I'm not opposed to doing it, because I think we need to have the tools to be able to enforce, but at the same time, we need to be judicious. And then the other thing is, we can't come on too strong with this, or else judges are going to kick this stuff in court, I think. So I think that's probably something that we need to take into consideration on this as well. But, all of this is still very subjective. Odor emission means the release of offensive or nuisance smoke, gases, fumes, and vapors into the atmosphere from the source, the odor generator, which is unreasonably unpleasant, distasteful, disturbing, nauseating, or harmful to a person of ordinary sensibilities. I mean, this is language that is very subjective. It's very difficult to,
Right.
what's offensive to some person is not offensive to another. So how do we,
Well, that's why that portion of the ordinance would be relied upon in issuing a citation without using the machine. If you read further in that section, it's not as much subjective, it's more based on the measurement within the machine itself.
Okay.
So that's what we're trying to do, is to provide that as an additional tool in the toolbox to deal with odor issues.
so by passing this, we actually make it less subjective?
Correct.
Is kind of
If you're using
the
that-
goal here.
Correct.
Okay.
Giving you an option within the ordinance that makes it less subjective.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, it gives, first of all, the first inspection will probably be a subjective inspection. I mean, if we get the odor complaint, we go out, we make the subjective inspection, we notify them of the need to follow through with whatever needs to be done to either air scrub, do whatever they need to do to eliminate the odor within the house that's permeating in the neighborhood. If they fail to do so, the next level would be, before we get to the point of issuing a citation per se, we'd issue a warning violation to say, hey, we're out, we can smell an odor. It's generated, obviously, somebody's growing in the basement, they're doing whatever they're doing, that odor permeates to the neighbor's lot. We give them the opportunity to make amends, fix what they're doing wrong to eliminate that odor. If they do not follow through, then we break out the mechanism, the olfactor meter, to measure the odor. That is how we would go forward if they are not a willing participant in compliance.
And you're not even
So-
talking about the people who are smoking, you're talking
Right,
about homes that are growing it.
Well, And so
I
that's
think
where I
that's-
want to go if I still have the floor. So, there's two different types of scenarios here. There's the, few friends over, who happen to partake, or there's the grow operations. And we have to really sort of treat these differently in the enforcement process.
Again, the idea of a couple buddies out on the back porch doing this is going to be nearly impossible for the building
Right.
department to monitor. Because by the time we get there tomorrow afternoon, once you submit your online complaint form, I'm sure they're not still hanging out on the back deck. Well, if they are, maybe. Generally, and again, it's going to be is this going to be a priority call for the police department? I highly doubt it.
So it's a tool in the toolbox, but it has to be used in the right circumstances.
Correct.
Mr. Pearl?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I think they're going to be very careful in using this. I'll move that we introduce this ordinance for publication purposes.
Is there a second?
I'll support introducing.
And I also want to make a comment that in my full-time job in apartment development and management, I've already encountered this many times. And while I've gotten complaints about smoking cigarettes a few times, the marijuana has been quite considerable. And there's always one group that loves to smoke their marijuana, medical marijuana, whatever, and that's great, as long as they don't bother the other people. But I get complaints for neighboring where they're so close in apartments that it goes right through the walls. And the other people may not be thrilled about it. And that's the problem, is you want to make everybody happy. It's very difficult. And in a lot of cases, I ask them to stop or get air cleaners that they can scrub their air and not let it go beyond their apartment. So I think we're going to have to work out something to mediate this, and I hope that everybody is considerate of their neighbors.
Mr. Cannon? If I can just say, I don't see this really as any different than what the state legislature enacted a few years ago regarding public smoking of cigarettes. It really was, the secondhand smoke was problematic for the health and welfare of people, not only people that didn't smoke, but people that did. So there was, I just see this as very similar in that we're trying to make sure that we're respecting other people's right to not be exposed to it, and those that want to participate, they just have a responsibility to make sure they're not interfering and violating somebody else's rights. So I think that's very similar to what we've already passed.
Sam Bushel, 18546 Wayland. What I can see on this, all of the talk tonight has been marijuana specific. I don't smoke cigarettes or marijuana, but what I can see on this is anybody who got a ticket or any kind of citation on this, if they could prove that they themselves put in a complaint about their next door neighbor's barbecuing and the order thing didn't come out, they'll get thrown out of court so fast and the township will be on the line. And I can say right now, the building department, I know somebody that had a diseased tree from their neighbor's yard that did major damage last year. They put in a complaint to the township building department. They haven't had time to come out and look at it yet. And I myself had the problem of having WOW do damage to the property that I have to take care of. I couldn't get the building department to come out. So I think this is something that could be a major liability if the right person with the right amount of bucks gets one of these tickets. They're going to have a lawyer that's going to prove that it's discriminatory.
Let me just make one correction. Our building department investigates every complaint they get.
Trust me on this one. I've got ownership of the property.
I guarantee you, our building department checks every complaint.
Nope.
Not all complaints are legitimate.
No, this one was. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Jessica Finch, 23303 Lakewood Street. I would just like to state that as a cannabis activist, I am in favor of having an objective finding of odor control. If you're going to come to my house and accuse me with subjective findings of odor, whether I'm growing in my basement or I'm smoking on the patio with some friends, I'd like some proof. I respect a responsible ordinance that starts off with a, hey, we got this complaint. Ideally, I have a relationship with my neighbors that says, hey, Jessica, stop smoking so much weed on your patio. But if I don't, and the police or the building inspector comes out, then I know I can mitigate that. I appreciate having some steps, and I would certainly appreciate objective findings of an odor problem versus the cops or the building department or you, Mr. Supervisor, coming to my house and saying, you think it smells like weed.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a support on the floor. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. And item 14, introduction of Township Ordinance 453, restricting marijuana-controlled substances.
Dear Ms. Meltzer, the Police Department is in support of the attached ordinance, which revises our Code of Ordinances, Chapter 620, relating to marijuana. Previously, marijuana was criminally illegal under the Controlled Substances Act in the state of Michigan. The ballot measure in November decriminalized marijuana and set forth specifics for lawful acts, including involving marijuana and unlawful acts involving marijuana, as well as various civil penalties for violations. We include a substantially revised ordinance compliant with the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. We also have attached a single-page schedule, MRTMA Civil Infractions, which lists by column the infraction, our ordinance code section, and the penalty for unlawful acts and associated penalties spelled out under the new act, and now presented as part of our revised code sections. Please present this to the board for their introduction and action by the board at the next regular meeting. We remain very truly yours, York Dolan and Tomlinson, John Dolan, attorney.
You know, this came at the request of the police department and our police chief, changing the ordinance so we can still prosecute for illicit and illegal drugs. There are still some drug violations for marijuana, such as underage, quantity, et cetera, that will be addressed in the proper form, and Mr. Dolan has done a good job of putting together a revised ordinance so that our police department can enforce the laws that we would like to have enforced. And marijuana is no longer criminal, as everyone now knows.
Move to introduce and publish.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pearl?
Oh,
Yes.
oh, did you wish to speak?
Kathy Voss, 20215 Webster Street. I might tip over a little bit on the last thing, but there are certain amounts of plants that people are legally allowed to have in their homes to grow, right? I think it's like, I don't know, 9 plants, 12 plants?
12.
12, okay. All right, so when they're growing these things, does it kick up that much of an odor that you would smell it outside?
If you don't properly
No?
have the electrical done and water done, the answer is yes. We do get quite a few complaints.
Okay, all right. What about, because if it's not a high priority for the police department to come out because you smell somebody, smoking a doobie in their backyard or something, and if it's off hours, if it's a consistent thing, what about, wouldn't it be maybe easier to go through the health department and lodge complaints, or no?
I don't think the health department has any jurisdiction, do they, Mr. Dolan?
That's
far
the
as-
county.
Yeah, I don't think that the county health department's going to respond to a complaint about someone smoking marijuana in a backyard, for example, or basically open burning, that type of thing. That's all done by local ordinance.
But if it's something like obnoxious, makes you nauseous, gives you like migraines or something like that, if it's a health issue, no?
Well, I guess it would really, obviously, with that sort of preface, we're getting into a whole array of possible sources. If there's some concern that it might be some type of critically hazardous substance, then we have our own ordinance procedures, we have emergency management procedures, we work in coordination with the county, and, we might respond in that way. But your typical odor-type complaints are generally handled under your local ordinance.
Okay, all right. So that, I'm going to call it the smellometer. If well, not me, but if somebody has a party in their backyard in the summertime, and you've got a couple people that are indulging, if a neighbor were to place a call on that, I think it would be hard smoking-wise, maybe with the plants, you'd be able to pick that up quicker with the meter, but it's like fireworks. By the time the authorities get there, they're done and you don't see it. So, that for the smell alone, just for somebody smoking, I don't see that a meter would do anything with that, just basically for the growing or something really bad.
Well, it all depends on the facts and circumstances.
Mr. Dolan, you need to use the microphone.
It all depends on the facts and circumstances. I mean, we can have a scenario, for example, where it's early evening in the summer, people are excited because now marijuana is legal. They have a little fire pit or something. You've got 6 or 7 people out there all smoking marijuana at once, while on the next, and these are 50-foot lots, which we have a lot of them in Clinton Township. The next house over, someone's in the backyard having a birthday party for 8-year-olds. And, that's the kind of situation where we hope that people will be respectful and responsible and of each other, because that's not the sort of environment that I think anybody wants to see or would condone, whether you're someone who uses recreational marijuana or not. So, there are many scenarios that I think we can easily envision where having this ordinance available would be something that would be beneficial.
I agree. You need to have something, but I think, also you need to maybe know the neighbors. That way, if that scenario there, you could just go next door and say, hey, I've got a buttload of little kids out in the backyard there. Do you think you could keep it down?
Absolutely.
So, okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may also, she had brought up something about how many plants a person could grow. Legally, a caregiver can have up to 5 patients, and you can grow 72 plants.
Yeah, 5 patients and themselves.
Or 6 patients, I'm sorry, I'm correct.
including
But you could have
Including themselves.
72 plants growing in a basement, or in a home, or wherever it is legal to grow. So it's not properly, number one, electrically, we've had meters fry off the side of a house, where we've had fires on the side of a house because the meters have melted. We've walked into basements that have been fully foamed with a foil-based foam, which does not meet flame spread smoke development ratings, putting any resident at risk of a couple minutes until they die if they inhale the toxins from the foam, if this were to cause fire. If it's not properly air scrubbed, the ventilation system, and a lot of the people that are doing this, they know exactly how to do it, and they do it right. But there's a lot of people out there, home growers, that don't know what the codes are, and they don't understand why they're in effect. And I, by all means, if any of them have any questions, feel free, contact us. We'll give you a permit to do what is legal here in Clinton Township, which we allow up to 200 square feet. 200 square feet in a single-family home is enough to grow personal use. I don't know if you're going to grow 72 plants in a house, but depending on the size, it's legal.
Well, I'd like to just, with that remark, I want to make sure the record's clear that the way that the first act, the 2008 Act, which involves patients and caregivers, is written, it refers to 12 plants being grown per patient, up to 72 plants per caregiver, but it also provides there's a rebuttable presumption that that amount can actually be required to be a lower amount, because you cannot grow marijuana in excess of the amount of marijuana that's needed to alleviate the medical condition of yourself as a patient or of the patients who you are acting as a caregiver for. And it's, I think, well known that the 12 plants and 72 plant thresholds, at least it's my opinion, in most cases, is going to be in excess of that amount. And so you might if you're interested in growing under that act, beware of that section of the law and make sure that you're only growing enough marijuana to meet your needs to actually personally consume it and not growing it so you've got a bunch of excess marijuana laying around. Because I think that's a violation of the act.
Thank you.
Yeah, there again, I think it's ironic that this stuff has been approved by the voters overwhelmingly in Michigan. And we're expending a lot of township money to, that you don't have to, advertise these, there's a cost of publishing and such as that. And I personally, and there again, you said at the last one that the building department's come out to all complaints. I can tell you, the building department has told me repeatedly, they go to no complaints that are on the road right-of-way, period. And I will get with the person that actually owns the house that has a rental property next door that had a tree fall on it, and I'll make sure, because I don't approve being called the fact that they respond to everything, when I've got letters saying they don't, and our police department won't come. Mrs. West was the only person that would come out to damage it at my house. The building department would not. The police department would not. I've got a letter to that effect. And I deserve an apology for you saying that they come out to everyone.
They inspect every complaint they get that's legitimate.
And it's not.
Just because you say something doesn't make it true, sir.
You don't remember last year with WOW?
Sir, this is not the topic. We have a motion on the floor and a support.
Yeah, just a couple of questions for Mr. Dolan, if that's okay, through the chair. Actually, it's really just one question, Mr. Dolan. When I look at this document, and I know we're just introducing it today, so I can also get with you outside of the boardroom if that's better.
Sure.
But on page 5, it talks about the inability to cultivate marijuana plants in visible public areas. Talk to me about that and the need for that in this type of ordinance. Is this saying that anyone that's growing within their home needs to make sure that, they don't have plants in the windowsill that a neighbor could see and make sure that's covered up? Is that something that's already covered under state law? What's the purpose of that section?
Okay.
It's F.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Basically, yeah, I've got it. It's, that's a part of the state law as passed that was also, essentially, the state law that was enacted, the statutory scheme, comes from the ballot proposal. So and again, this ordinance that you're dealing with now is recreational marijuana. This is not the medical marijuana under the first act, nor is it the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act marijuana under the second act. So this applies to recreational marijuana. You cannot have recreational marijuana that's visible under those circumstances or you're in violation.
But obviously, with your clarification, medical is treated differently on that.
Correct. There was 3 different acts in Michigan, which doesn't make it easy for
Right.
the public and for everyone to keep things straight. There's the 2008 Act, there's the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act, and now there's the Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, which is commonly referred to as the Recreational Marijuana Act.
And then just lastly, that was F. I also looked at H, and obviously we're talking about possession of marijuana near a school or on the property of a school or a public or private school. Do we have the ability to expand that and say within so much distance of a school, or is it just physically on the grounds of the property?
This is basically coming directly from the state statute. So at this point, we're better off, we can, through our zoning process at the correct time when we address establishments and so on, we can deal with spacing. This is essentially a replication of the state law provisions that we're codifying into ordinance form. And the reason we do that is because when our police go out and enforce, those will be processed through the township attorney. For the most part, on misdemeanor and lesser type offenses, the county prosecutor's office strongly encourages that. They don't want to have to deal with offenses at that level. They prefer that they be handled at the local level, which I think is in part one of the reasons the chief wanted us to get this adopted.
Okay, yeah, one of the reasons I was asking is the one thing that jumped out to me was the lack of libraries in there. I assumed in that wording libraries would have been included, and so that was just my reasoning for bringing it up. So I'll get with you and we can talk a little bit more about it. I appreciate it, Mr. Dolan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Roll call?
Just for clarification, it's Mr. Pearl was the motion maker and West did the second? Okay. Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. West? Mr. Keith?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Item 15, introduction of Township Ordinance 454, parking enforcement.
Dear Ms. Meltzer, enclosed please find a copy of a revised parking enforcement ordinance. The police department and police chief concur that this ordinance be introduced for action by the Township Board at this time. The ordinance in its present form authorizes our police department and Macomb County College through its public safety officers, parking enforcement officer, and public safety cadets to issue tickets on community college property. This ordinance was adopted in 1985. The new proposed ordinance tracks with state law MCL 257.675D, first adopted in 1989 and amended thereafter. Under the state law and as set forth in the ordinance presented for introduction, the Township Board may authorize the police department to implement a training program whereby persons trained not less than 8 hours in parking enforcement who successfully complete such training program may be authorized to issue tickets as permitted under the state law. The tickets including blocking sidewalks, driveways, fire hydrants, crosswalks, parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk, parking where a sign prohibits parking, and parking in a handicapped space. Under the ordinance, we will require that indemnification agreements be executed for such persons by their employers. This ordinance does not in any way limit our police officers' ability to enforce parking, but instead allows for better parking enforcement by having additional trained persons available to enforce parking violations. Please present this for introduction at the next regular board meeting, and should you have any questions or wish to discuss the matter further, do not hesitate to contact me. We remain very truly yours, York Dolan and Tomlinson, John Dolan, Township Attorney.
Okay, the Henry Ford Macomb Hospital requested this so they can have their security personnel write tickets, but keep in mind, the mall has security people that can write tickets. They will be trained by our police department. The mall and the college and the hospital do not want to write tickets unless they have to. They want their people to come and feel safe and secure. But so this would be more for some blatant violations.
Kind of getting them, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I've seen way too many times where you have a car blocking where an ambulance can come. And it's just, it either has to be towed or something has to happen.
Exactly.
And most of the time, in the past, they used to put these god-awful orange stickers that couldn't come off on the window. So this is a little better ticket, at least, because you probably spent that much to getting the stuff off of your window.
Thank you. This is at the request of our police department as well as the hospital.
I'll make a motion to introduce the,
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. West?
yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Add item 16, introduction of Township Ordinance 455, prohibition of recreational marijuana establishments.
Mr. Cannon, there is no letter, but both myself and Mrs. West and Mr. Pearl attended an MTA conference this past week, and from that, we participated in one of the classes that dealt with recreational marijuana and what the other communities have already done in terms of protecting themselves from state enforcement and state, what the state may want us to look like. By participating in this, it does not state, and some people have contacted me on this issue, we are not saying that we are not going to opt out. This just means that until the state of Michigan has its recreational regulations in place, this protects us, and then we can have more time to decide what our ordinances are going to look like to address recreational marijuana.
Would we be able to change almost instantly if we chose to and opt back in? Mr. Dolan?
Address that.
I'll
We
use the
actually are-
microphone.
Microphone.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, right. We are, in fact, opting out which is what we're required to do under the statute, and that's what the ordinance says, we in turn can, if you want to, after it's adopted at the following meeting, if you want to introduce another ordinance and pass an ordinance that would allow it, you could. When we opt out, it's not a permanent decision. We, at that point in time, can amend and can introduce an ordinance that would allow recreational marijuana under whatever circumstances you felt were appropriate in that ordinance. In other words, it's not like you opt out and you're precluded from changing your mind and doing something different later. So,
Mr. Cannon? Could I ask that Mr. Dolan speak to the fact that this ordinance addresses protects us in terms of keeping us from being in a situation where the state kind of controls what we want in our own community?
so what makes this act, which is, I'll call it the Recreational Marijuana Act, I think that's what most people call it, what makes it different, for example, from the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act, is you had to actually affirmatively adopt an ordinance under that act to then be in a position where people could utilize certain establishments and uses that were spelled out in the act. This is different. If you don't want to have medical marijuana establishments within your community, you affirmatively have to enact a recreational uses in your community. You have to affirmatively act to prevent them. The reason we haven't acted yet is the state has yet to promulgate rules, and really, until they promulgate rules, there won't be a process by which people can apply for and get state licenses. If the state did adopt rules and people did apply and we continue to do nothing, they could potentially get licenses from the state and be authorized potentially at locations that, in retrospect, you may not have wanted them. So there is some benefit to that in the sense that we are being precautionary. We're making sure that the state doesn't suddenly release rules and put us in a position where we don't have sufficient time, we believe, to get an ordinance in place on it. But we're also in a position where if you do this, you're not making what would be a permanent decision that can't be changed later if the board feels that it's appropriate to come forward at a later date with an ordinance that in fact would allow, under whatever circumstances you think are reasonable, medical marijuana establishments, either by number or by type.
Thank you.
So, and if I can, just to follow up with that, I just want to thank my two colleagues for taking the time to sit in with me on that. And we sat in together, and I think that this is a move in the right direction to protect this community. I also want the public to know that we do, when we go to these conferences, they are chocked full of information that definitely we can bring back and either implement or make adjustments accordingly. So they're very important. It's like continuing education. So thank you, Mrs. West and Mr. Pearl, for your participation.
Thank you.
We will take your comments, but I need a motion first.
Wait, and I do have
move.
to say, Larry Opaleski from the Planning Commission was also there. He was in that meeting with us.
I'll move to introduce with the intent to adopt this ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I think the
I need your name and
information,
name and
Theodore
address.
McGregor, 38419 Wooster Street, Clinton Township, 48036. I've been in this community since 2007. I'm a retired executive vice president of a chemical corporation, also the founder of the largest analytical laboratory in the state of Michigan, RTI. And I have been investigating the medical marijuana and the recreational marijuana business for an investment. And the community that I wanted to invest in, it happens to be Clinton Township, since I'm a member of a Clinton Township. I have people who are on the committee that I work with that were on the state committee that was just dissolved in technical chemical experts that totally dismiss everything that was said at this meeting. There's a court judgment going on today that will allow medical marijuana homegrown, going to the dispensaries because there's not enough grow places in the state of Michigan right now. So they're going to reverse that until December. That can be verified. I would like to suggest that we bring some other technical experts to the next meeting before you make your decisions and let them explain to you what the state is doing now, because the state disbanded the group that was holding back all of these licenses. The state has no desire to impose anything on the communities. I work also with Lennox Township, and the state wants your vote, your visit, your approval of all the plans and everything else before they'll go down and say, that's it. So you go to the top of the pile if you have a Clinton Township approval. Otherwise, they're going to be giving out different places. Now, your communities, Warren, Lennox, other communities are jumping on this, and what you're saying is you're going to opt out, and I understand. I don't smoke marijuana, I don't take drugs, and I don't drink. But I see what you're doing is saying, I'm going to step back, I'm going to wait for all these other communities to put in all these facilities.
We're not saying that.
But that's what's going to happen.
That's not what we're saying at all.
But in essence, that's what's going to happen, because they're all, particularly Warren and Lennox. Lennox are putting 6 major facilities on Gratiot Avenue. 6. Some of them are huge facilities, and they're micro facilities, so they can grow, process, and distribute all in the same facility. Now, I'm also interested in the analytical part, which I'm working on. But what you're saying is you're locking out me for analytical, anything, but it says recreational, but under 453, restricting controlled substances, marijuana. Doesn't say medical, doesn't say recreational. So 453 wasn't discussed today yet, I believe, or did I miss it?
It was.
It was?
We did. Mhm.
Okay, well, I didn't pick it up. So all I'm saying is that I think some of the information that you may have is dated information. The former group and our present governor, who's doing an excellent job in my mind, disbanded that group. And the 3 people she has in there now are all professionals, and they really want this because we voted it in. And I say we because it's all of us together. It isn't him or you or didn't want to do it. Again, I don't do it myself, but I just went through something with my grandchild who's Hodgkin's lymphoma at 14. And I wasn't looking at medical marijuana and anything other than, it's trendy. Well, it isn't trendy. It actually works. He's now out of the program, and he's a sponsor for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So I've seen the personal part. And that's why I'm standing up here, because I really think medical marijuana / recreational, because we're all adults. I was at one place out in Howell where the guy said, who was your supervisor position? He said, guys, it's been here for 100 years. This isn't new. What we're doing is regulating it now. We're keeping the children from getting it. We're keeping them from being able to go down the street and have these MS-13s or whatever our gangs are in Detroit selling them this stuff, which is cut with all kinds of nasty stuff. We have all kinds of deaths going on in Macomb Sheriff's Department downtown because they're getting those drugs brought in that are all cut with these nasty stuff. And if you know anything about marijuana, you can have heavy metals, you can have pesticides, you can have contaminants, you can have bugs, you can have ticks. These kids are all smoking this stuff. So this is a way for us to control it. And I have grandchildren. I don't want them smoking marijuana right now, but it's a way for us to control it, us, not them, because them are already doing it. So if we want to walk away from this and let the other communities do it, and I think it's a mistake, and I'm a citizen, so I can be mistaken myself, I think you should reconsider it. And again, I would love to bring some real good experts, technical people, at your next meeting and let them make a presentation to you. I would love to prepare a paper for you if you'd want, and give you other facts and details to review. If you've got a closed mind on it, then I realize I'm wasting my time. But I hope you don't, because there are some real benefits to the community, and there are some real benefits to marijuana.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you.
I too have seen many cases like your grandson. I've heard that story over and over again. And I have tried to educate myself and this board also to bring information to them. And once again, I will have another public forum on May 22nd at the Macomb Library, right next door here, the Clinton Macomb District Library, Room A at 6:30. I will have an attorney, I will have doctors, I will have school personnel who are dead set against any marijuana in the community at all. What we're talking about here tonight, I wasn't sure I would agree with the message because it is recreational what we're talking about, but not medical. I, after all the research I've done, believe in medical marijuana.
Well,
And I know you do,
no
too.
question, medical marijuana, but recreational is adult stuff that's going to happen someplace, and if they got to drive to Warren, or they got to drive to Lenox, or, it's something that's a community that, and there is tax money, and there's going to be more of it. It's going to grow and grow and grow.
But I would
So-
encourage you to come out on May 22nd.
Oh, I will be there, and if there's an allowance for me to bring an expert or two with real good credentials, I'll bring them with me.
Call our office tomorrow, and I think we're going to have 3 pro and 3 con present, and then be available for questions.
Thank you very much.
And I don't know if we filled our 3 yet, so call tomorrow.
And by the way, I moved from Harrison Township, best move I ever made.
Mr. Cannon, can I just address Mr. McGregor's statements regarding getting up-to-date information? Just so you know, Mr. McGregor, the people that presented at the conference that we were just at were part of the work group that was just put together by Laura, and the one that you were talking about that was disbanded, that is not who addressed us. So this was the latest and greatest information that just is allowing us as a township to protect our interest. It doesn't ban any future opportunities if we so choose to implement recreational use and legalize that and have that commercial element in our community. So that's all this is doing. It puts the power back in our laps, and that's what we're saying we want, because we're listening to all of you here today, and we're taking that into account, and that's how we want to be the ones to be able to come back and say, this is what the people of Clinton Township want. Doesn't matter what Lansing wants, doesn't matter what, Lenox wants. It matters what Clinton Township wants, and that's who we represent, and that's what will, make that decision. And that's why we want that control.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I need my name and address for the record again? No? Okay. So I had this little fire in the belly speech written up, but you guys are being way more responsible than I thought you would be, so I appreciate that. I sit on the board of Michigan Normal. I sit on the board of Am I Legalized? And I'm also a board member of Seroptimus International Greater Macomb. I'm not just a pothead, okay? I respect the township's decision to wait until those rules, and I can't say the promulgated word very well. Those rules will be established in June. The governor has asked for that. I don't think that's an unreasonable amount of time to wait to see what the state is going to enact, because what is appropriate that I wrote down is that I think Clinton Township has an opportunity to lead the county in responsible regulation and taxation of marijuana businesses. I am so proud to live on the east side and in Clinton Township. I tell everybody how proud I am to live here, that I was able to buy a home, and my fiance owns a few businesses. Let's do it the right way. As a cannabis activist, I am all about having our facts lined up and straight. I want Clinton Township to eventually opt in. I do find it responsible to wait and to see what the state rules are. However, with that being said, keep in mind that there are people like myself I have no financial interest in the marijuana business. I have not applied for a license, nor do I intend to anytime in the near future. I'm not liquid enough for that. However, if the township opts out completely, that leaves the township open to citizen-led ballot initiatives where the board loses all control. You should be afraid of professional, passionate potheads. And if you're not, then you should talk to Bill Schuette and Tom Leonard. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
I think the township clerk would be the one that would know how Clinton Township voted on the marijuana issue. Were there more yes?
Yes.
Yes, I know it was. And so we know pretty much how Clinton Township feels. The other thing I would say, we're trying to, Groesbeck and such, we're trying to fill some areas up. Well, like Mount Clemens, Gibraltar Trade Center right now, they're going through the final approval. That's going to be a major grow operation. It's going to be reusing a building that is, for all intents and purposes, wasted space now in the whole, they've got for the whole area. And I think that Clinton Township, if you block out the people that are, developing now, you may definitely, especially what you're talking, rules are going to be there in place in June. How much are we spending for all these, to actually publish all these ordinances? Because I know it costs quite a bit of money. We're going to publish all these, and you're going to approve them next week, so it'll be sometime in May. The next month, the rules might come in, and we might find that it's a very good idea to repeal them. So then you'll have to pay to republish them again. I would say if the state is coming up with the rules in June, I would wait until June to decide on all these ordinances. Thank you.
We were told December, but
December 6th, wasn't it?
December.
Well, December 6th, yes, but they said that because the governor wants to move more quickly on these, so that they think it may come down, it could come down tomorrow.
Right, but
We
they
don't know.
weren't sure of that.
We don't know,
That's
yeah.
the-
Hi, Rich Emmers, 18018 North Oak. I'm a big advocate, proponent for it, and believe it or not, I hardly use it, but when I do enjoy to use it. But I want to play devil's advocate, and when I talk to people that, will say they want it, and people say they don't want it, I look at it from this, the devil's advocate part of it. Look at all the establishments within the township that serve alcohol. How many are there? There's a lot. Restaurants, bars, drugstores, gas stations, and anyone can go in there and buy a bottle of beer, bottle of booze, whatever the case may be, and no one ever questions that. And there's more harm done to the human body, and studies will show there's more harm done to the human body with alcohol than any strain of marijuana, natural marijuana. I'm not talking like the gentleman spoke about that's laced with other, I'm talking about the stuff that comes out of the ground, you grow it, you trim it, you use it. And I'm also a big proponent on God created it. And as you see, I have a cross on my arm, so you can tell I live by the cross. God created marijuana. It grows just like corn, just like wheat, just like grass. And everyone has a purpose with corn, wheat, grass. Everything that's grown, there's a purpose. So I want to say to you guys, let's use Clinton Township as the block for Southeast Michigan to build, so people can say, hey, you know what? They started this, and you guys will be the ground running. And it's like he said with Groesbeck, it'll bring businesses to Groesbeck. I live by Garfield, and between 17 Mile and 19 Mile, it's dilapidated nowadays. It's nothing but empty building after empty building after. Burger King's been empty for what, 4 or 5 years now? And every time I drive by, I'm like, why isn't something happening there? Think of that. It's going to make the township look better. And, when you get the rules from the state of Michigan, maybe you could add your own rules and say, okay, you're only allowed to be open from this time to this time. You have to have an armed guard at the front door to make people feel more comfortable. You have to have 2 different types of safe, one for money, one for product. There's so many different stipulations that you can add. So I just, hope that you guys have an open mind and realize that, this is 2019, not 1919. And times are changing. And we need to get on the same road as everybody else, and obviously, people voted for it. So it's not like I'm, some guy out in the back that just decided to show up and just talk about this. It's a well-known topic. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Mr. Johan?
Okay, I want to get us back to where we are, and that is the way that the Recreational Marijuana Act was written. It essentially says that if the state goes out and promulgates rules and you do nothing, the state can actually allow licenses within your community. Or it says you can opt in, and then you have a say-so as to what's happening within your community. If you haven't opted out, the state does have that option to then plant these facilities in. So that's the recreational marijuana law. Layer over that, the MMFLA, the Michigan Marijuana Licensing Facilities Act. Layer over that, the 2008 ballot proposal for medical marijuana, which is all the home grow operations. I've done a tremendous amount of research on this. I served on the exploratory committee that Clinton Township put together. I've studied the revenue stream, as you would expect the treasurer to do. I've studied the economic development claims that have been put forward. I see that there's a lot of money in this, but I don't see a lot of money in this for Clinton Township. I don't see enough funds to offset the social consequences of this, and I am not philosophically opposed to marijuana, and I do believe that it does have medicinal qualities. But here's what I also know, and that is, yes, this may be a natural substance, but the reality is it alters the brain. And for the youth brain, the prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop in males until the age of 25. For females, because of course they're more advanced than we are, 23. But the fact is, none of these proposals had any dollars assigned for youth prevention. Gambling had gambling-addicted prevention dollars, ad campaigns, all of these different things. $0 for youth prevention in any of these proposals. At the local level, my job is to, I think, listen to the voters. And yes, the voters approve this. But my job is also to make sure that I protect the community from the law of unintended consequences. That's what I think you've seen here tonight. You've seen the opt-out until we know what the actual rules are, once they're actually promulgated, written, and how they fit in with all of the other 3 acts that have already been put together and the promulgation of those rules. The enforcement mechanisms that the police department has asked for, given the fact that recreation is now legal. And so how do we make sure we keep it out of the hands of kids? How do we make sure that we keep it off of school property? How do we make sure that we can enforce people having more than the law allotted amount? All of those types of things. We talked about it earlier with the properties. We want to be self-directed in what happens within this community. We were elected to represent you. That is what we, I think, are trying to do. We have differences of opinion here. I don't expect everybody to agree with me, but what I do want them to walk away with is saying he's done his homework and he's developed a well-thought-out position on this issue. So as a result, I'm supporting this evening, and we're going to continue looking at it. We're going to continue seeing what the rules are that actually come out of this, and then see about, if we do medical marijuana, and this is just a point that I think is important to make, one of the things that no one is talking about, all of the advocates all over the place, there's a provision in the MMFLA that says if you do medical marijuana, the 3% excise tax goes away 90 days after the implementation of the proposal. So that means if you do just medical marijuana, local communities get $5,000. That 3% excise tax, even the third of it that we were going to get, so the 1% excise tax of anything that's permitted within our community, completely gone, goes away. Doesn't exist anymore. So that means it's an incentive, so you have to do recreation to be able to do the 10% excise tax. Then there's the concern that if you do medical marijuana and the state promulgates rules, it automatically allows recreational facilities. These medical facilities automatically become recreational. And so there is a concern that has happened. It is a gray area in the law as to how these 3 acts fit together. So I think we do need to be cautious. I do think we need the rules in place before we move forward. And I think in the meantime, opting out in spite of publishing cost makes sense.
Thank you.
Lisa Valerio now, 20761 Marvindale. I want to thank you, Mr. Gillingham, for actually bringing up something that I was going to bring up. I am an educator, librarian for over 25 years. My biggest concern is that I live in an area, 15 in Groesbeck area, that has lots of schools there. We have elementary schools, parochial and public, We have high school, junior high, and what really concerns me about the marijuana law and, you know, the readily available now is that it is going to harm our kids and that they will not be properly taught that how to use it or not even to use it. We have Mothers Against Drunk Drivers for the reason that people abuse alcohol. There's going to be other organizations like that, I'm afraid, that are going to pop up because of the abuse of marijuana and drugs. So thank you very much for saying that and for clearing it, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Mr. Keys?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree. I'll be supporting the introduction in this ordinance because when we debated this issue initially, I had voted against sending the medical portion of this to the Planning Commission for the same reason, is that I wanted to wait until the state had set their laws, and then we could act. And I realized that the board chose a different direction simply because of the opt-out versus opt-in mechanisms that are in the law, and the recreational portion does require us to opt out if we want to protect ourselves in this situation. And it does give us the ability to opt back in at a later date. So I appreciate the board's comments on this and still agree that we should be waiting until the state puts out their rules so we know what the rule book is before we just decide to allow it in our township.
Further comments? Roll call.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes. Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Approval of the minutes of the March 25th regular township board meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes. Motion passes.
Approval of the bills.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes. Motion passes.
We have one public comment. Mr. Sam Bushell.
Oh,
Hello, under public comments, as you know, at last meeting, under public comments, I mentioned about the gas tax and getting an Attorney General's position. I then sent you a couple of emails over the last week. It's been a hot topic on the Nextdoor website. When you're looking at, there again, the township, the income levels are going down below the average of Macomb County. You represent our township income, people that are taxpayers. We're going to get nothing from this gas tax. Not a penny. It'll go to the cities, it'll go to the county. All I'm asking you to do is for this board to ask, just as with Mr. Keys and Mr. Aragona, you guys asked for an Attorney General's opinion there. It doesn't cost anything. The taxpayers are paying for it. Strictly ask for an Attorney General's opinion, not on just the 45-cent gas, on any gas tax a new gas tax in Michigan. Does it, by our Constitution, require a vote of the citizens? And in as much as a gas tax is going to affect lower-income people more than anybody else, and the fact that this township is going to get not penny one from any gas tax increase, I can't imagine why this board wouldn't want to represent the people you're representing, the people paying your salary, and strictly asking for a simple Attorney General's opinion on any gas, just any gas tax. Can they go through without a vote of the citizens? Thank you.
Thank you. A motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.